Hey everybody, this is Chuck, and before we get into the TESD Town Takeover for this month, which I'm very excited for, I just wanted to say thank you to any new listeners who are coming to check out the podcast for the first time from the world of Tell 'em Steve Dave. You might know me because I've directed about 150 projects with Tell 'em Steve Dave over the past 8 years. I'm the host of TESD Tapes on the Patreon, and yeah, this is going to be really, really fun. We sat down with the guys when we went up to do the Funbearable versus Tell 'em Steve Dave game night, which I hope will be out really soon. And we had a ton of fun with my favorite people from the world of Tell 'em Steve Dave. I love everybody. I want to get everybody on. I just wanted to say before we start, if you enjoy the episode, there are a couple other episodes you might want to check out, including the game Psychic Trivia that Brad, one of the hosts of Funbearable, came up with. And we filmed it with Walt Flanagan and Get Him Steve Dave in the studio.
Ray, real quick.
Yeah.
Ever had your IQ measured?
Yes.
And it's...
It was...
Unless you don't want to say.
I think IQ tests are weird anyway, but it was 148.
Beautiful. He has no idea. He has no fucking idea. Beautiful. He has no fucking idea what you're talking about.
You're 148 too?
Yeah,
Just get him, Steve Dave is 148.
This was back in like...
Oh, he probably had his in
middle
1973.
School,
Mine was in school as well.
So then Chuck, have you ever had your IQ measured?
No, not that I can recall.
I think it's... Yeah, you're going to need a helmet and...
Great episode. That was very fun. And then also, Tell 'em Steve Dave is famous for their excellent Halloween specials, and Walt has really been an inspiration for me, working with him for the past 8 years so directly on all this stuff. We do a lot of great Halloween specials on Funbearable, and we end every October, which is full of at least 4 Halloween specials every year, with an episode that is kind of our official Halloween special, where we do it on a porch, recorded on Halloween, where we're passing out candy and telling each other stories, and it's very, very fun. Those are all up on the feed. Go check them out, but please enjoy this sit down with my personal mentor, one of the best guys in the whole world. I love this guy. He's been so kind to me, and he's helped me so much with my career. Brian Nashel.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Funbearable. I am Brad Rohr.
Just checking. Yep, Ray Harrington.
I am Chuck Staten, and with us today is my good buddy, my mentor in the world of film and television, truthfully,
Okay.
Brian Nashel. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, I'm all right.
Thank you for coming on, man.
Well, thanks for the offer, Chuck.
Oh, dude, when we were coming down, this has been on the table for a long time. I told you that a while back.
It's true.
I was like, I got to get the story of this guy. And Ray and Brad are meeting Nashel for the first time.
That's correct.
However, Brad was part of a project that you hired me to do, and we're going to get to that eventually. But I wanted to talk to you today because obviously you've been involved in the Tell 'em Steve Dave world for a long time now. We met because on the Tell 'em Steve Dave Patreon, I direct a show called Tales from Behind the Fake Counter. Nashel is the host of this show.
Yes.
It goes through the behind the scenes of AMC's Comic Book Men. Nashel was the...
Showrunner.
Yep. And for the whole show, and we had we have a great time doing that. It's one of the shows that people like the most on the Tell 'em Steve Dave Patreon. I think Walt considers it like the golden child.
Oh.
And he said it never. That's the one that never misses. That's one of the shows that never misses. And Nashel is a huge part of that. He's a magnanimous guy. It's crazy that he's on the other end of the camera most of the time. It's true.
Yeah, it was weird getting involved in that. That was like doing that first podcast was the first time I left the house. Like I broke the lockdown rules during COVID because Walt called and I'd been watching a bunch of podcasts like the Sopranos recap thing they were doing.
Yeah.
And it was so he called me. He's like, "You want to do this thing? We'll go down memory lane. We'll look, behind the curtain at all 96 episodes."
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay." And I guess what we're doing this to like split screen. Like it'll be the 5 of us. He's like, "No, come to the shop." And then he revealed to me that the shop didn't really close. It was not really complying. So then I'm like,
Scoops. We're getting scoops.
yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah, it just sounded like I missed doing like directing Comic Book Men so much that I never really thought of doing, like being in front of a camera on a podcast or whatever, but I was like, to relive it and just like how often you get to capture the old glory. So I did it, and I told my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go down to the shop. She's like, aren't we not supposed to? Like, everyone was like confused. What are the rules this week? You know, are you not supposed to? I'm like, well, I don't know. They got their little bubble going. And I've been in my little bubble.
Right.
Hell yeah.
So we'll just go. And it really was that creepy feeling of like, I'm breaking the rules and I'm possibly bringing home like Ebola to my family. But I really kind of want to do this, right? I remember that's when I first met you.
Yeah, that's when we first started like working together, and you know that was years ago now. I don't know how long ago that started, but now we're on episode like I think we're on episode of like 35 of Tales, and it doesn't come out usually more than like once a month. So it must have been several years now.
Well, if it was during lockdown.
Yeah,
exactly.
It
Yeah.
must have been
Time frame,
20 years.
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah. But yeah, so Nashel, you know, we were introduced then. We've talked, you know, a lot since then, become friends, have a great working relationship. When I got hired to direct Drew Barrymore's pilot for CBS, I was like, I have no idea what to charge these people. So I had to go to Nashel, and he'll help me out in situations like that with figuring this kind of stuff out. But you've been really kind to me. Great time there to tell him Steve Dave stuff. Storied history in the world of television, right?
I mean, I'm no Mark Burnett, but I've done all right for myself and gotten a good reputation in like what I call the world of basic cable shows.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I've worked a lot for MTV and History Channel, Discovery.
Yeah.
AMC, obviously, A&E.
Yeah.
All those shows that come with your basic cable packages.
Yes, exactly. And I want to know because we're doing. It's an evolving landscape, but I'm in the same world of film and this kind of media stuff. And we've never really sat down and talked about where this started, how it started, and all this stuff. And that's what I want out of this. We don't usually do interviews. You know what I mean? That's not usually the show we do.
I didn't even know this was one. So it's cool, yeah.
And we never really like we kind of talk about the fact that when comedians come on, the story is essentially the same every time. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If you want to get someone's behind the scenes. But this is such a specific thing that I'm very excited to jump into this. So I want to know, start from the beginning.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, exactly. You grew up in Jersey?
The beginning of my life or my career?
Well, I want to know where the career started, but we need a little base.
Yeah,
where you were.
Born and bred in Jersey.
Hell yeah.
My whole life.
Yeah.
I had 3 older sisters and, very sort of, we rolled the line of, lower middle class into middle class. We weren't, we were a family of 6 living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Fort Lee, New Jersey.
Yeah.
So we certainly weren't, spoiled kids or lavish in anything, but we were tight. We were a tight family. I mean, I grew up in sleeping in a bedroom with my 3 older sisters. So we had, 3 beds, and then one was like a trundle that would pop up, and my sister had that one. So it was just wall-to-wall beds.
You were in a drawer?
Yes. No, my sister was. Okay. Yeah, it was like that Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta say, I had to share a bed the past 2 nights with Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
at my place.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, exactly.
It was not wonderful.
This is why Nashel rules. What an attitude.
He's willing to lie immediately?
Chuck's the one putting me on a podcast. I kiss his ass whenever I can. You got to grease the wheels to look good on the podcast. Get the best lines and stuff.
I'm good. I stay on my side. I put a pillow divider. That was pretty good.
Yeah, well, you say, I got to grease the wheels for the podcast. Chuck was like, hey, let me grease your wheels. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I'm trying to sleep.
Multiple interpretations on that one.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, Chuck's squirrely.
The way he put it was, he's like, I can't believe I have to share a bed with you. You're so amorous.
Whoa.
I know. It's true. All right, so you're growing up in Jersey. So where do you kind of get interested in this world?
I didn't really think about this world as a possible career at all. I remember listening to Kevin Smith talk about his journey.
Yeah.
And I saw Jaws or whatever he says, and it's like, I knew one day I can make a movie, or then he saw Dazed and Confused and was like, I can do that, And I never had that moment. What happened to me was I was always a storyteller. I was always a writer.
Right.
I would write. I would do great at creative writing all through school.
Yeah.
So I was a natural born storyteller. I knew that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I never even thought about going to college until my junior year, or the summer going into senior year. I just wanted to be a drummer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It was all
How
music.
How long were you drumming at that point in time?
I mean, probably since 4th grade.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
So you were at it like a lot. Were you in bands?
I was in bands. I was in all the bands in school, you know, the marching band, the jazz band. I played for the theater, you know, anytime I could play the drums, I would play.
Damn, I didn't know that was that ingrained. That's
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, I played a lot. Like when I was a freshman in high school, I was in bands with the older guys. So of course I got turned on like way young to drinking and everything else that went along with pretending you're a rock star.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I was like 14 in bands with 17, 18, 20-year-old dudes and just
Damn.
in their garages.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I had a weird little childhood in that sense. Like just grew up really fast.
Oh yeah, probably,
Yeah,
right? If you're
yeah.
just jumping. So this is also in what? In the 70s?
No. I went into high school in 84.
Oh wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So you were born in the 70s.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. I meant you were
Yeah,
born
yeah.
in the 70s. So you're in 84. Wow, that's really interesting. So the bands that are like huge at that time, is it kind of like the rise of hair metal, basically?
It is, but I didn't pay much attention to that. I didn't like it, you know. So
Really?
so like my friends and I were steeped in classic rock. It was all about Zeppelin,
Hell yeah.
The Who, the Stones, the Doors, Janis, Hendrix, all of that. And like the hair metal was like, ugh. And I never played in those bands, you know. So
Do you still feel like that about all that stuff?
yeah, I
This
mean,
interview is over.
No.
I'm out of
Motley
here.
Crue?
I loved Crue. There's some metal bands I had. Like I loved Motley Crue. I loved the Scorpions.
Yes. Okay. All right.
I actually loved Cinderella because they were really blues based. you know?
Yeah.
So I had some of that, but then you know, when grunge came along, then it was like, okay, this is music I can get behind, and that's when I started like incorporating newer stuff. And like when I was in college, like a little after college, then I would play with dudes, and we would do Pearl Jam and Nirvana stuff.
Right.
All right, this interview is back on.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So it wasn't like I ever thought like I could do this or thought about it. I went to college. I graduated. I got a job at a public relations firm in New York. I had no idea what a public relations firm was.
So what did you go to college for?
I went to college for English. I was an English major.
Got it.
Damn, I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And
I went for public relations, and I was halfway through my last semester, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this at all.
Well, that's so interesting that you say that because I didn't know what it was.
Right.
A professor of mine hooked me up with this firm. I interviewed. They're like, "Great, come to work. $20,000 a year is my first job." I was commuting from my parents' house into the city, and I literally like I just told my daughter like I didn't know what public relations was when I showed up for the job. I didn't really understand what they were telling me at the interview, but they wanted to give me some money. And I could do it, and it's like not like I could Google like what is a publicist or anything.
Yes.
Right.
And then eventually I learned what it was, and I worked there for over a year to come to that conclusion that I do not want to be in public relations. Once I got a hang of it, I did pretty well at it because I could write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell my kids all the time, like, if you can write, you'll do well anywhere.
Yes.
That's good. That's great. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so I did that. But while
Except
I was
dance.
Yeah.
Except dance.
So you got me. You got me on that. Right. So while I was doing that in the city, a friend of mine who's like 3 years older, also grew up in Fort Lee with me, was working at MTV. He had an internship there, and then he was working at MTV, and I used to go visit him. And that's kind of where it started because I was exposed to another world. And I would go into 1515 Broadway and I'd walk around and I'm in like a shirt and tie every day for my job. And people are in shorts and they're rollerblading through the halls with holding bottles of Jack Daniels.
Unsafe.
So this is like you're 23
This is like 1994.
and you're like 23 years old, basically around that age.
23, 24.
Wow, 94 MTV, like being behind the scenes is
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's wild. So I was like, dude, sign me up. Let me know
Yeah.
if something opens up here.
I just want to rollerblade indoors.
I want to do something, man.
Yeah,
I want to take this tie off.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So that was it. So eventually he called me up and he was like, hey, I just had a production assistant drop out from something we're doing, this show called Howard Stern's Door to Door. I don't even remember what it was. I didn't go on any of the shoots. He basically hired me to start digitizing footage. And it was weird. Like you guys know, like how things are made now and files and hard drives and downloads.
Yeah.
Back then, everything was shot on beta. Betamax, and then you had to load the footage in through a deck in real time.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
Set up
It
the
was essentially
digitized
recording
tool and-
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were kind of the first generation to have Avids. Everybody had Avids over there. So once I got my feet in the door, it was these two things. So then I quit my job after I saw like I can do this. And
Yeah.
I just quit. I had like 3 months of work, as every freelancer does. And I'm like, that's cool. I'll just do this. But I got to get out of that thing.
Yeah.
So I quit that job. And then it was that show. And then right after that was the first time I was in the field on something, which was a show called Kennedy's How To. And if you remember Kennedy,
I do.
I do.
VJ,
The VJ, yeah.
she did a show which was really cool. Kennedy learned how to do things
Right.
with experts. So she learned how to play tennis from Pete Sampras.
Right.
She learned how to drum from Lars Ulrich,
Yeah.
which was awesome for me to be in the field
Yeah.
on. So then I got a sense of it, and I was just like a sponge because I was.
Sorry, I just like the
No.
idea that Lars is doing his thing, and you're like, no.
Oh, yeah.
Sloppy technique there.
Yeah, no, you're doing the thing from what's that movie?
Whiplash.
Oh, God, no.
You're doing
Do
the
it
thing.
again, Ulrich.
Oh, but it was fun. Like his drum tech came in and they set up 2 kits at a studio so Kennedy could be on one and Lars
Yeah.
could put on one. So then I was like, I think maybe the director, who was a friend of mine, was like, hey, he plays drums. And he was like, oh, dude, help me set up. So we set up
Yeah,
the kits and we
yeah.
were sound checking together and
Oh,
totally
that's nice.
jamming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun. And
Yeah.
I was like, like shit like that. I was like, this is my world.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
hooked, right?
Yeah.
I'm wearing shit like this. Cursing. Back then, you didn't have to worry about anything you said or
Yeah,
did. You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah.
So it was just an extension of college in a way. You were with people who you liked, you gravitated towards, and you're on a kind of team. You're on a little team,
Yeah.
and we've got to get this done. And I was just a sponge, and I really I wasn't like raised for success. It wasn't like I had parents who were like, do great in school and get a career, and like I was kind of like left to my own. It was very 70s where it was
Yeah,
like, oh,
right.
you're out. Who the fuck knows? You know what I mean? There was
Yeah.
no rules. And I really didn't come from that kind of family that was like raising you to be a lawyer or
Right.
success in any way.
So 0 film production before this?
0.
Wow. So
Yeah.
but the creativity is there because you've been part of bands for a long
Yeah.
time. So you did have the DIY, I'm going to figure this out, technical aspect of creativity kind of already in your, going for a long time.
I did in that sense, yeah. And
I do think it's similar.
It is for sure. Especially when I started, it was so much more hardware than it is now. That everything is like on cards and digital. It was like putting decks together and patching
yeah,
decks
yes.
through, which was very similar to amps and PA systems.
Yes, okay.
So it was that kind of stuff that I was kind of good at. And really, I think I just had a natural story sense. So what I always tell like young people who want to get into this business, I'm like, was my first job where I learned how to do everything. I was loading those tapes in. I had no idea what a director was. I didn't know what a director actually did on set, but having to load those tapes in real time, I would sit there and watch all the raw footage, every second of raw footage, and log it. At this time code, the director is doing a close-ups. At this time code, and it would all come together. It's like, they're taking a wide shot. And after a while,
you're seeing the mechanics of it.
the mechanics, and then I would start to do it. I would go on doing this like logging, and then I would start to do it in my head and be like, probably should have done another take of that.
Yeah.
Oh, you kind of fucked up. There's no wide shot. You should have gotten a non-sync wide,
Right.
And I really learned what to do and what not to do from loading all these tapes.
Yeah.
And like,
And this is how editors are often in the porn industry. There's a lot of, it's easy to, kind of armchair quarterback a porn shoot, right? Yeah.
Should have
That's all I
thrust
do.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Should have
usually-
slowed down. Should have slowed down.
I usually share a video with Brad and then be like, here are my notes. And then, this should have been cut, too long, too short. Yeah.
wait, so is it? You guys all have great senses of humor, and I'm not sure if you're kidding. Do you come from the porn world?
I do come
he's
from the
kidding.
porn
No,
world.
you
He's kidding. No, he's kidding.
I do.
He's very dry.
I mean,
Today.
look, it's not. I'm not going to say it's mainstream. I don't look
Go on.
mainstream, but I started. It's a little different than you. I started young and like really young, and I was in a very different field. But unfortunately, a lot of that doesn't. Like, I can't put that on my CV. You know what I mean? So it's but it's where I learned a lot of the job, really, and that's what people forget, that it's a job.
Yeah.
It's a
I'm glad
lifestyle.
you felt safe enough to share that with me.
Yeah. I don't hide it. You know,
It's true.
because you can't find it. The early stuff, you can't find that. And if you can, that's a problem for you.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great though. That's awesome. And so it's almost like it's so funny. You're doing the fucking. You're the little rat in Ninja Turtles watching the master.
What a compliment.
Well,
You're
that's
the
how-
little rat in Ninja Turtles.
That's how Splinter learned karate.
I
He
like
was
it.
watching the master.
Yeah.
And so you're not even planning on it though, is what I mean. He wasn't like, I'll take this job to learn about establishing these shots and editing and putting this stuff together. You didn't do it on purpose, but you just started being like, oh, I'm noticing this, and now I'm having my own opinions on it.
Yeah.
That's
Like the rat learning.
Just like that rat, man.
Eating your cheese in your cage.
But I do often recommend to people that they get involved in post-production first. Like if you want to be a director and you're young, like you're getting your first job out of college, get with that post team.
Yeah.
Don't throw yourself in the field before you're ready. You get in that post team and you start going through all that footage and seeing how things are put together, you are immeasurably a better director when you get out there. And
I believe that 100% too.
yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
yeah, so that was just a fun. There was no rules. There's a lot of rules right now in terms of how much you could work people, and I didn't know I was being taken advantage of, and I wouldn't even consider it that. But like, so I ended up doing this VH1 show called Rock of Ages, like short-lived, actually maybe 2 or 3 seasons. And it was a cool show, way dated if you watch it now, but very cool. And you know, I would be in the field all day with those guys. I would label the tapes, come back, and then I would come back to the office at 6, 7 o'clock at night, and then I would stay there and load all those tapes in so that they'd be in there in the morning there was no like assistant editor or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I was in such a weird headspace because I'd quit that other job. I had a bad breakup, and it happened at the right time where all I wanted to do was immerse myself in this. And like I said earlier, I didn't ever think I would find that thing that I could be successful at.
Yeah.
So I got my hooks into this and I was like, all right, I could probably work hard and do well in this industry. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to let it go. And I never complained. I did everything and then some that I had to do. And then I would load those tapes, and then little by little, I would sit at the editing system and be like, all right, well, I remember all these great things this person said. Let me pull them out and make a little timeline so that when the editor comes in the morning, he can just look at a timeline, a string out, what we would call it now. I didn't even know it was called a string out.
Yeah.
So it was really
Did you do that on your own? Like
I
you
did
made
that
your
on my own.
Wow.
And I loved being there.
See, that's great. That's part of my whole idea of working with new people. I have this thing that I've talked to people about where I'm like, whenever I work with a new person on video projects that a relationship's going to begin, I always try to over deliver something the first time we work together to just show that I'll be really I'll take initiative on different parts of this that I know will need to be done. And that's so interesting that you did that exact thing kind of just naturally.
Yeah, I did. I loved being in that building. It was a cool building. They had these every quadrant of a floor had these little kitchenettes with fountain soda machines, and you can get all the fountain soda you wanted. And there was always people hanging out. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And you'd go to the bathroom. I remember taking a piss, and Adam Duritz from the Counting Crows comes in. He's taking a piss next to me. I was like, how you doing?
Yeah.
So I started just being in this world, and I didn't want to leave it. The world out there was not kind to me.
Yeah.
My heart was trampled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like a loser.
And you were even more attracted to this world because of your interest in music before that.
Yeah.
This was almost like that creative interest pulled you towards this other creative interest.
Dude, I couldn't believe I was working at MTV because, I was 10 or 11 when MTV launched, and we didn't even have cable in my house. We never had cable in our house. I had to go to my friend's house and we watch it. And I just couldn't believe it because I never felt like a person that was going to be successful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So then
What just you mentioned Rock of It. What was Rock of Ages? I'm trying to cycle through my TV brain.
Rock of Ages was on VH1, and it was basically a show that it juxtaposed old people watching videos and young people watching the same videos,
Right.
and then intercutting the reactions. And the reactions were elicited by a host. So we had 2 or 3 different hosts. We had one guy named Henry Alford who had been a writer, a very successful writer, right? Like he wrote for The New Yorker, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like really smart dude. And he was so buttoned up and kind of conservative, and he had this very distinct voice. And we would pair people. So we did like the Hells Angels. So we were actually the second crew to ever go into the Hells Angels clubhouse on 3rd Street in the East Village.
Okay.
And Henry Alford, in his checkered shirt and his little haircut, was sitting there, you know, across from these hardcore Hells Angels, and they would watch videos, and the videos would be related to like motorcycles in some way.
I was hoping they'd be watching Lisa Loeb stay.
Yeah. I want like, oh, it's a Tina Turner video or something.
Yeah, no.
I
Hells
can't-
Angels are like, I mean, life is like rolling on a river.
Yeah.
You know?
And then the other side of that coin was a bunch of kids from Long Island that had a little BMX bike club.
Yeah.
And we would intercut. We
Oh,
did
okay,
like
that's
Boy
cute.
Scouts with a bunch of videos, and then when we shot on the Intrepid with a bunch of World War II videos.
Okay.
We show them all the same videos.
Yep.
And then we would cut together, so the video would be kind of strung throughout, and you'd get
Right.
reactions, you know, old person reacting, young person.
Yeah, yeah.
And I cut
I
that
did a
show.
lot about Boy Scout.
I don't like
During
this
his
thread.
during his pornography career.
Yeah, we this may get a shut down.
yeah, right.
Why?
It's he grew up where it was normal. It's fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't normal.
Where did you grow up?
I can't talk about it.
He grew up in Maine. He came
Savvy.
from Maine.
You know, I am originally from Maine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he moved to Rhode Island probably like 20 years ago.
No.
Well, it was-
no.
when
like
was it?
14 years ago? No, 13 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So we met you like, wow, you kind of like, that's weird.
Without us,
Why is that weird? This is
Without
time.
us, you wouldn't be here.
It just feels like we met you.
Yeah. But we both have a different inflection when we say that.
It's just interesting. I thought we met you like way later while you were here.
No, I don't think
Just because of your relationship with the other comics and the Comedy Connection.
Yeah.
So we work with this comedy club in Rhode Island called the Comedy Connection. And that's Ray's home club. That's where we would perform before we even became friends with Ray. And that's where we record our podcast, is in the basement. The owners have kind of their own studio set up that they let us use. It's not like for public people to rent or anything. It's just for us and them to use. Or I should say, it's just for them to use and they let us use it.
Yeah.
But I kind of thought that Ray had more of a long-term relationship before we had met, but I guess not. It's interesting.
Yeah, like 2011 is when I moved to
here.
Rhode Island. So,
yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
I don't know.
But
I'm sorry.
I'm just surprised. But so that's awesome. So you're kind of taking these steps on your own. You're taking these forward steps, saying like, I'm going to put together this timeline. And so does that move you forward? Like what happens with that?
It doesn't. You know, it never goes unnoticed, right? So like even now, I tell the youngsters now, do not ever sit around doing nothing. There's always something to do in television. So if there's 5 PAs on a set and you're the one PA who's constantly walking up to somebody and saying like, what else could I do?
Yeah.
What else could I do? I was like 9 times out of 10, it's going to be like, okay, nothing. We got it covered.
Yeah.
But even at the end of the night in an office, don't ever leave. Go up to that boss, and even if it means you're going to stay an extra hour or whatever, or even if they tell you there's nothing else to do, you're going to go. So it never goes unnoticed when you do extra work, right? So what happened was on that show, Rock of Ages, was I ended up having a little rift with a friend of mine because the guy who brought me into television was a producer on the show.
Okay.
And then I think by season, I don't know what I started. Maybe I even started as an AP and as an associate producer on that series. I was an associate producer. And I just got really good at everything, like really fast. And it didn't go unnoticed. And the showrunners, we got picked up for another season, and the showrunners came to me and they're like, listen, we got picked up for another season. We don't want to bring back that person. We want you to step up and take that job. And I was like, whoa, okay. I was like, that's weird. But in my defense, I did go to him and say, hey, this is what happened. And he'd been bad-mouthing them. He was like, I'll never work with those guys again.
Yeah.
They're
Okay,
assholes.
all right. So it's
I
not
s-
like he was like, I can't.
He was saying that about the World War II vets.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. That's fucked up.
That's verboten.
So you weren't taking the spot that he was like fighting for.
I wasn't. Then I went to him and I said, hey, they said this. They got picked up. And he was like, I don't care. Go ahead, right? So I'm like, okay. And then I did. And then next time I talked to him, He's like, so what happened with Rock of Ages? I was like, yeah, we're going to do it. He's like, so you took that job? I was like, yeah. He's like, fuck you. Go fuck yourself. Fucking backstabbing piece of shit.
Why?
Yeah, we didn't talk for a year.
Wow.
The idea of going out of your way to get permission, the person's like, sure, and then you do it, and they're like, oh, you're a piece of shit.
Fucking ghastly, so hard. And he stayed at MTV. He was working at MTV, and I would see him in the halls, and he would just fucking ghost me.
Yeah.
And it was really, I was hurt.
Yeah, I
I
bet.
did something wrong, yeah. And
By the way, his name? Kurt Loder.
can't do it.
I was just about to do that. I was just about to do the same thing. Yeah.
I was like, the opportunity's
Yeah.
coming. And I was just cycling. I'm like, who should I pick? Who should I pick on the MTV?
see,
There was
I
a guy I
was
worked with in
thinking
my
Adam
history
Curry.
called Kurt Loder as well. And his brother, Spurt Loader.
Oh, yeah, Spur Loader. He was infamous.
One of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
True chemistry, by the way. True chemistry.
Sparks.
Yeah.
Absolutely sparks.
Literally.
Yeah.
That's great. So all right. So you kind of step up, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
At this point, you're thinking like, well, maybe this will be like the direction I go in for my career.
Yeah. I kind of thought this. It kind of all came together for me. Just like what I was sort of naturally, which was like I was good with people. I was a good talker. I was a good bullshit artist when you need to be.
Yeah.
But being a good writer was the basis for being a good editor, and being a drummer was the basis for being a good editor too. So
I completely agree. When people talk to me about my music stuff going into this, I'm like, more often than not, especially with comedy, I feel like you're editing rhythms. That's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
what you're doing. You're killing space in between things to create stuff that feels natural and feels organic, and it's about rhythms of dialogue.
sure is.
A lot of times, which
Yeah.
is really
Yeah.
along with music, actual music that you put in.
Right, very literally cutting music.
Exactly, right? That's so. I'm so glad to hear
yeah.
you say that. That's
No.
cool. I completely agree with that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it all helped. And I kind of stuck in it. And like with any business, I guess, like you just build a network of
Right.
people that you do, you know, you do good work all the time and you don't complain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just, I don't know. I think just, again, like I didn't have a sense of entitlement growing up at all. And so when I was older, I didn't feel like anyone owed me anything.
Right.
I felt like I constantly had to work for everything. I mean, I'd worked one job or another since I was 12.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so any job, and I would often have 3 jobs.
He'd often have 3 jobs in one day.
Very tough on the ride home.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting.
All 3 different jobs, though. Yeah.
Sometimes at the same time.
Yeah.
Sometimes at the same times. Those are the bonus scenes.
Yeah.
That's right.
I would get a bonus for those scenes. Yeah.
Oh my God. I love this part of this conversation so much. I love that we went here.
I hate it. Poor baby Ray. Poor fictional baby Ray.
Not a baby. That's disgusting, Brett.
For the right price, he was a baby.
Toddler.
Yeah. You have to write your name on the contract, right? You have to sign.
So
Very litigious people.
Yeah.
Very litigious. So you're at MTV. You're like, this is great. I've found a passion.
I found a place.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm thinking too.
And at like, is there a point where you're like, man, MTV is gonna be MTV forever? I'm rock solid here. You know what I mean?
Well, I want to
Right?
know. I want to know what the progression is because
Yeah, yeah.
eventually you start moving.
Yeah, I did. You know, everything was freelance. So it was like show to show, job to job. You
know.
You're hoping this thing gets another season so you can go. But if not, you're talking to other people and people know you're around. And so people are like, hey, we're doing this thing. You want to do this, right?
And people outside the industry should kind of know, even with comic book men, like which is way later, each season you're just like, maybe we'll get picked up, maybe we won't. And Practical Jokers even deals with the same thing every time they go off the air. And so there's a weird dance that people in the industry have to do, which is, do I look for another job, or am I so confident in this thing is going to get picked up again? Because at some point with comic book men, you do take another job and you're not part of season 2. You know what I mean? So it's a weird thing. There's not a sure thing every time. It's you take a job for a specific amount of time, and it probably will just mean that amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, up until the last 3 years of my life, I was a freelancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's like 25 years of being a freelancer.
Yeah.
Like, okay, clock's ticking on this one. What's next, you know?
So you're working on this show.
Yeah, so I ended up going over to do a bunch of stuff at. So after the MTV VH1 stuff, I went over to Epic Records as a freelancer.
This is so interesting. You're gonna love this.
And
I know a little bit about this.
The dude that was not my friend for a year, we got back together. We're still very good friends.
That's great. Yes.
I think his ego obviously was hurt, and then later in life he had to accept.
Yeah.
That wasn't the right way to handle it. Whatever. That happens.
So he got this.
Well, we have somebody here today.
Oh my God! I need
Spurt loader.
a box of tissues for this one. I didn't know it was going to be. This is your life.
So why do you go over to Epic Records? What is your expectation?
I got to tell you, I don't even remember how he got that gig, but he got this one gig. We ended up being like part of this in-house video crew at Epic Records that would make basically internal videos, right, for EPKs, right? So they would send out electronic press kits on new bands, and we did a lot of stuff for their big meetings. I forget what they're called, but they would have these big meetings where all of their
Freak-offs.
no, we did work with Diddy.
I know you did.
So did I.
Yeah, of course you did.
He was the first, right?
Yeah.
Was it the first?
He said that you gave him his first taste. Is that
Oh, no. At the time, he was Sean Combs. I coined his nickname Puffy for different reasons. So that was...
And then eventually it did become Puff Daddy.
Yeah.
You did call that,
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're at Epic Records.
Yeah.
Making EPKs and you're working with bands?
Working with bands, it was a cool job.
Yeah.
It was a cool
Yeah.
ass job. Like sometimes they would say, "Hey, we're looking at this new band called Mayfield 4, right?" At the time. And the lead singer, I forget his name, he's still around. He's great. But take this high 8 camera, go to CBGB's, shoot them backstage, shoot some of the show.
See, that's fucking awesome.
Interview them.
That's great.
And so I'd grab the high 8 camera, go to CBGB's, get run of the place, and then come back to Epic Records and load the stuff and cut, 2.5 minute thing. That they would show.
Really boring side question. Really boring, real quick. Where did you learn how to like frame things and shoot things and like kind of capture that?
On the job, baby.
All right. That's what I wanted to know.
On the
That's
job.
all
I
right.
mean, watching videos, watching MTV.
Yeah.
I did a pretty good fucking job too for like, I'm honestly faking it till you make it.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
And I had a lot of happy accidents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think shot composition, if you just... Like, if you watch enough stuff
Yes,
and your
you
eyes
get
are
an
open,
idea.
you get it. You know what I mean?
By the way, Happy Accidents, that was your first video with Puff Daddy, wasn't it?
It wasn't happy accidents. That was different. That was definitely different.
Yeah, you're right.
I think it was just called accidents, but it was an X instead of 2 C's. Does that make sense?
It was 3 X's.
Oh yeah, that was a bonus one. I got a big bonus on that.
It's all coming back to you.
So you're going to
That is so true, though. I think it's fun that idea of shot composition and stuff.
Ray is also a filmmaker too. We
Sure.
didn't say that about
Yeah,
today's
I
show,
did a documentary and some shorts and pilot stuff and things like that. But it is fun when I do think there's like a mystery of how it works for a lot of people. You know what I mean? And there's often there's a sense of just you point the camera at whatever you're doing, right? I'm like, well, that's half the battle, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is
in terms of framing and figuring out what looks good and what makes sense.
And I think I was always the guy with the 35 millimeter film camera growing up, so I'd taken a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
So I always thought I took pretty good pictures.
Yeah.
Applied there. And I think a lot of shooting for me was about not being lazy. I think a lot of people are lazy when they shoot and just like, here's my, my medium shot there. But if you're willing to get in there and contort your body and look at things from a little different perspective, I mean, everyone's walking around looking at everything like this all day. So I don't know, get in the corner and look up at it.
Yeah.
These were just the things that were going to my.
Oh
Let me
God,
try
I just
this.
had a flashback. The director said that to me once. Get in the corner and look up at it. And I was like, all right.
Your second video with
Yeah.
I believe he can keep this going for another 3 hours.
That's what a director said to me as well. This is insane.
The stamina kid.
So you're at CBGB's. I mean, you must be like over the moon as like a dude who just loves music.
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, it's great.
When you were there, did you like lean into anybody that worked there? This is not a joke. I'd just be like, what's the Z and the B and the G?
No.
You know, I'll be honest. I still don't know.
Do we know what it stands for?
Country bluegrass and blues.
That's right.
And other music for, I don't know if it's uplifting or upstanding gormandizers, because it's CBGB and
OMFUG. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Gormandizer. That's a great word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brad likes words.
Yeah.
I like knowing things.
That's a long lost word that I incorporate that every once in a while.
Yeah, good. Michelle's very prolific. It's true.
Yeah. I
Can you
noticed
use
that
it in a sentence real quick?
No, I noticed that Chuck used the word magnanimous earlier and just said prolific, and Chuck's like, he's really putting that word a day email.
Well, I used ethereal yesterday,
Yes,
and
you
then
sure did.
Ray copied me.
Yeah, he did.
That's bullshit because I had said ethereal like 3 times in the car on the way up. Why are we arguing about this? This is so dumb.
And then when you said it, you saw me go, ooh. Ethereal.
It's a word up.
So you're working with these bands.
Yeah, it was great.
So who tell me some bands you're working with at that time, or artists.
Yeah. We did stuff with G Love and Special Sauce.
Yep.
Mayfield 4 was big. I think Candlebox came across our path. And the thing we did, Ozzy and Henry Rollins.
Yeah.
That was actually, I think, the first time I ever went to LA. Man, and did I feel so fucking cool. Like I probably the second or third time I was on a plane, but it was the first time I went to LA, and it was to shoot Ozzy with Henry Rollins, interviewing him at Sony Studios there. And I just remember feeling like such an imposter in one sense, right? Like you guys do I have to pay for my flight? And do I have, you know what I mean? It was like, no, we're going to pay for the flight, of course, right?
Yeah.
But it was so bizarre. I was like, I guess 5 or something, and 27.
Yeah.
It was cool, man.
That's awesome.
We did a Jimmy Page and Puff Daddy thing.
Yeah,
So-
for Godzilla.
Godzilla soundtrack album.
Yeah,
so
the
that
98
one we
Godzilla.
ended up working with a lot of different bands and shooting little parts for this, I wouldn't call it a documentary, but it was like a behind the scenes to the Godzilla soundtrack album, which like nobody ever saw these things. Everything we made was just sent to industry people to build hype for whatever they were
It's
doing.
like it's B2B, video shooting, right? Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
But it was fun. It was a fun little world. And again, I learned a lot. And I was doing a lot of what started doing, which was I would shoot stuff, come back and cut it. And then I became like known as this, what we started calling a predator, right? Which was like a producer editor.
Yeah.
And
We had those in my industry as well.
oh yeah,
Both types of predators, right?
Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah. Often the same.
Also,
We would call them predator cubed.
also, yeah, I was going to say,
There was another predator.
Dangerous.
also a third kind. He had dreadlocks. He would go invisible.
Yeah.
A lot of predators.
I did get covered in mud a lot.
Yes.
I hope it was mud.
thought it was mud. Yeah.
German shoot. It wasn't mud.
Schwarzenegger was there.
Yeah, that's right.
Huh.
So, all right, that's awesome. So you're known as this predator.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to
Me
it.
and Harvey.
You were known as a predator. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for the record, producer editor, and we started calling ourselves predators. It was never a credit you would see on screen.
Yeah.
But it was
But it was on your business card.
I think of myself as an educer, not a predator.
Dude, I speaking of business cards, around this time, I was kind of getting into the freelance game. Like,
Right.
okay, I need work. Let me get a business card, right? I go into one of those little print shops in the village, and I have to pick out a card, right? And the guy's like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm in film and television. I'm looking through a book, right? There was no like online, whatever bullshit. So I'm looking through a book. And all the film ones were like so pretentious. It was like a film reel or like a camera or something. So then I find one for a plumber. And it's like a dude and he's holding 2 toolboxes. And I told the guy, I was like, I want this.
That's awesome.
And it didn't compute. He's going, no, this is not for you. This is for plumber or workman,
Yeah.
electrician. And I'm like, I want this. I ended up getting that guy.
Yep.
And then I wrote like Brian Nashel, producer, director, editor. And then the card actually had the words honest, dependable, or honest, reliable,
Yeah.
or something. I'm like, leave it. The guy thought he was helping me. I'm like, dude, it's kind of ironic, don't you think? He says, no, this is for plumber.
Yeah.
And those were my first business cards.
That's awesome. I love that. That's a great story. That's
Yeah, I
awesome.
still have a little stack. I'll get it.
Oh, yeah, give me one. That'd be amazing. I love it.
But that's how I felt. I
Let me
felt
get
like,
this card. What's this guy carrying 2 lunch boxes?
if you didn't get it, I didn't want to work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not true. I would have worked for anybody. But it was just so indicative of how I felt.
Of course,
I just
of course,
felt
yeah.
like a fucking plumber. I never, to
wow,
this day,
I love that.
ever felt like I'm doing anything special.
Right.
You know, and it's my wife just cracked up at me this morning because she's like, "What are you going to do?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. Chuck wants to talk to me about my job." She goes, "Ew, you don't talk to anyone about your job. You're going to talk to Chuck for an hour about your job?" I'm like, "It's crazy, right?"
Yeah.
And child porn for a little bit of it. So,
Oh, this is a bonus.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was happening.
That's what you were alluding to.
oh yeah.
I had a whole thing that he also had a business card with him with 2 lunchboxes. No, I'm not gonna go there. Yeah, but yeah, no, I mean,
Mine
that's
said reliable, but not honest. yeah.
Yeah,
reliable. Can keep a secret. No, it's so funny that was your take. I had no idea. I didn't know if we'd come into this and you were gonna be like, when I was 10 years old, I got a high 8 cam. I started filming, videos in my backyard. You came into this as like, oh, this would be a cool direction. Okay, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to work up. I'm going to go up 5%, then up 5%, then higher and higher and higher. So you get this business card, and who do you give them to? Everybody?
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, you're just
you go,
networking, yeah.
you kind of walk through 1515 Broadway, and you would, see somebody, and you'd be like, "Hey, I'm wrapping up this thing. Call me. Here's my card."
Yeah.
And people would laugh at my card. They thought it was funny.
Good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. I was just hell bent on not letting this opportunity go. Was basically it
Yeah.
because I didn't know what I would do. I knew I didn't like public relations.
Yep.
But I really didn't know what else there was in the world to do.
And you were probably excited to contribute creatively to things. That's probably like more fun than doing something that's a little bit more books. You know
Oh
what I
my
mean?
God! Yeah, it was fun.
Books.
It's more
I
just like
like-
a caveman.
I liked
with the letters that all make sound.
But I liked being in the field. I liked editing. I liked
Yeah.
losing myself in editing.
Yeah.
And again, it was just such a surprise to me to have a career that I was kind of doing well at.
Yeah.
And I would take any job. Sometimes I would take a job as like okay, you're an editor writer. I'm writing all the voiceover copy. I'm cutting this thing. I'm doing scratch voiceover in the mic. And it was stuff like that where I would just use my skills. Even to this day, like when I was show running, I would, between gigs, like, you'd say, "Hey, I'm waiting for season 2 to come back." I would just take a short-term editing gig or something.
Yeah.
I would, do a sizzle reel where I was like, "Okay, well, you guys have a sizzle reel? I'll go out, I'll shoot it, I'll cut it, whatever. Pay me whatever, keep me going until I see if I'm getting a season, whatever, coming back." So
So what were some of these projects? You remember some of them from that time?
the sizzle reels?
Just like different things you were doing at the time that were just random. The voiceover stuff, anything.
Oh man. Like I did so many sizzle reels. Like I did a sizzle reel for a special effects makeup artist named Mike Michaels in LA, which
Yeah.
was fun. And I loved that stuff. You'd go in and you just get immersed in a little world.
Yep.
You get the gist of it, you shoot it, 2 or 3 days of filming,
Yeah.
come back, cut it, and then just work with the development team on how to sell it.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they don't sell.
Yeah.
But it got me paid for a little while. And I would take gigs like that for the weekend. I would have people call me up and say, "Hey, we just shot a sizzle. We have 2 weeks of edit. I know you could cut it in a weekend, and I'll give you the 2 weeks of pay."
Yeah.
And I'd spend my whole weekend cutting a sizzle reel.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, shows started to come. I did Boiling Points for MTV with the
Yeah.
same people I did Rock of Ages for.
I don't know if Chuck has told you this about me. I remember watching the show Boiling Points, and every once in a while I'll be in a situation, maybe Ray at the bagel shop earlier today, getting frustrated with it, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm getting so mad, this annoying thing," and I'm like, I gotta keep calm just in case I'm a contestant on MTV's Boiling Points. Like that conscious thought.
You said that to me multiple times a year, every year for the past 15 years.
Yeah. It's a thing where I'm like, all right, well, this will help me not like just be angry. Where I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, I am angry, but I can't act like I'm angry.
No, and if you keep your cool long enough, you can get $100.
I would love that.
Another thing they said to Ray.
Yeah.
Extra hundo, Ray.
I'll say it's honestly, it's more, I don't want the embarrassment of being the first to boil. That's all. I'll be number 2.
By the way, this guy walks in fucking boiling.
Yes, that's true. I'm
Don't keep it inside, Brad. Don't you'll explode.
I will.
You hear that? Just in there.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Boiling points is fun.
They're like,
Yeah,
why,
that
why is
was-
Brad boiling? Somebody put onions on his sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Big X across your face,
Yeah.
Brad.
Yep.
No, that was my first supervising job. So I became supervising producer on Boiling Points, and that Boiling Points was a fantastic learning environment for me. It was the closest I've ever got maybe to like being in a scripted show, because we had a team of writers and actors.
Oh, yeah,
you
that's
know,
right, yeah.
and we really carefully mapped out those boils. It was a very intense sort of psychological experiment,
Right.
social experiment.
Yeah.
And it was fun. We did a ton. We did 90 episodes.
Yeah, damn. So that must have been for a while.
Yeah, we did that for a while, and that is where I got my first sort of like, okay, I'm a supervisor. I've got a team under me, and I was like right under the showrunners, and from there I ended up. It wasn't too long after that, I guess, where I got my first showrunning job, 2005. And I ran a series called Unwrapping Macy's for
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, Women's
That's
Entertainment.
cool. I love that. I've watched that.
Yeah?
I watched it on Christmas because I think of Macy's as. Did
Yeah.
you do it for?
We did a Christmas special show.
Yeah, maybe that's the one I watched probably.
Yeah.
Because the thing I watched was completely about Christmas.
We had Puff Daddy on that show.
Ooh, there you go.
When I was doing Unwrapping Macy's, Puff Daddy at the time, How the Mighty Have Fallen, he had the number one. I may be a little off on this, but at Macy's overall, he had the number one suits, number one activewear, number one cologne, number one everything. Anything he did under that Diddy brand, that Sean John brand,
Yeah, Sean
was
John, yeah.
number one.
Damn.
And we did a series, an episode on like PR, actually, like on the whole PR marketing episode.
Damn. Yeah. Man, and he never invited you one of those freak offs? You're a handsome guy.
No, thank God.
Come on.
No, man. We were, when we did the Epic Records thing, we shot at Diddy's house, right, at his studio, and they brought Jimmy Page in, and it was unbelievable because Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin,
Right.
okay, you're not going to
know.
get any bigger than Jimmy Page,
I know.
was the most respectful guy, respectful of our whole process, everything we had to do, the nicest, most humble, gracious, lovely, lovely English gentleman. And Puff Daddy was a dick to everybody.
I'm sure.
It was like 6 hours late, middle of an interview, a diamond dealer just comes in with a little black velvet thing full of diamonds, and Puff's just like, hold up, this one, that one, go. And the funniest thing, I guess, I was always afraid of getting whacked by telling this next part of it, but I think that he's got bigger problems than what I'm saying on Funbearable right now.
Yeah.
What was wild was he had just started dating J-Lo.
Yeah.
So J-Lo came by the set for a while.
Okay.
Looked amazing, was in and out of the studio walking around, and ended up on our footage. And we got a call from someone on high that then called, someone that we worked for, and was like, that footage can't exist. We shot on 16 millimeter film, but we worked off of one light transfers. So we had all these like 3/4 inch tapes or something that had the one light transfers on. And I personally had to sit there and black out every frame that J-Lo appeared in. They were so paranoid that J-Lo at Diddy's house was going to get out that I had to rewatch all the shit.
Damn.
And fucking record play over this time code to that time code. There's J-Lo.
Wow.
It was some weird shit going on. But that was, that was the dude that I did that with called me when, all that shit was announced with Puffy. He's like, couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I'm like, revenge. He was such a dick to us. Like, I'm sure he, obviously was like a little pebble in the world he was living in. But, but Jimmy Page was fucking nice and
That's great.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I always regret being such a pussy. I brought 10 albums with me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the balls to ask him to sign any of them.
Of course, I know.
But I did get a picture. So it was, the days before everybody had a camera. So there was an actual photographer there.
Oh, yeah.
With legit cameras and stuff. And I took the guy aside and I'm like, dude, here's the number one thing you have to get. I want a picture with Jimmy Page, but I don't want to be the guy to say, Jimmy, can we get a picture? You have to throw us together and be like, let me get a picture of you guys. He's like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So he,
That's honestly, that's a great, great plan.
right?
Yeah,
Pretty
that really is.
manipulative.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
why I'm a good television producer. The guy does it. He's taking pictures of Jimmy and Puffy together, and he goes, come on. And he puts us together, takes a picture. So I know there are these pictures out there, me and Jimmy Page, but I don't know how to get them. And I call up Epic Records eventually, and there's a woman named Polly Anthony who was like the head of everything over there at the time. And I knew her assistant pretty well from setting stuff up. And I was like, dude, what happened with those pictures?
Yes,
She
of
goes,
course.
oddly enough, all the proofs are laid out on Polly Anthony's floor right now, and she's going through them. She goes, get over here right now.
Wow.
And I jet over to Sony,
Yeah.
and I open Polly Anthony's massive office, and there she is with fucking tons of big, like 8x11, 9x11 black and white proofs, but they didn't say proof or anything. They were beautiful pictures.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, remember me?
Yeah.
And I was like, somewhere in here, there's a picture of me and Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
She was like, come on, have a look. I looked around. There was like me. There was my boy. There was me and my boy with Jimmy. Snatched him up, left. It was like,
Yeah.
dude,
That's
did
amazing.
the work.
Yeah, that's great.
So I didn't get the album signed, but a picture of me and Jimmy Page, that's
cool.
like it. I should have retired then.
I like the idea that they're like the proofs. They're all laid out on her floor, and you rush over and you open the door, and like the wind from the door opening
Blows him out the window.
blows them out the window.
You're running around
And
Manhattan.
3 seconds before it, they're like, "We did it. We set them all up. This is the perfect order. We just can't."
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I like the idea of in those photos, like Diddy is always photobombing, and it was fine until about a week ago.
Yeah.
Right? You were like, I mean, it's kind of fun. It's Puff Daddy. Wow, that's cool. And then last week, you're like, oh, I got to take that picture down.
Yeah.
Let me
recrop.
Ray is the Jimmy Page put out a big hardcover book called like Jimmy Page on Jimmy Page or something like that.
Yeah.
And in that book, which I have, is a picture from that day.
Yep.
And I'm literally standing off to the side. It's not in the picture.
Yeah.
But I'm like, fuck, I'm right there. How dope would it be if I was in this picture in the Jimmy Page book?
I think that's my knee.
Yeah, exactly. That's my knee.
It's
Yeah.
very clearly a dresser. I don't know.
It could have been my knee.
Yeah.
So then, the Epic Record thing was great because it afforded me that, and it was cool, and it was the closest I ever got to like being in rock and roll.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
So that was a cool job, and then
I like the idea. I just realized the idea that you're there and like Jimmy Page is talking to Diddy, and you're in the background, and you're like, how do I bring this in? How do I get this to be a part of the conversation? So you start doing like paradiddles on the counter, and you're like, you know what I mean? You're like just showcasing some percussion, right? Like, oh, doesn't that sound good? You got cups and pots and pans out. Your wooden spoons. Yeah.
you find that John Bonham replacement yet, Jimmy? There was a
very
dude
fun.
there playing drums that was laying it down.
Yeah.
By the way,
I believe it. Of course.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super fun to be part of that, to be like basically brought back into that world from a different angle, essentially.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's cool to be capturing that. It's cool to be in charge of capturing that and making the decisions of how to capture that because you have a passion for it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really, really fun.
No, it was a good world, and so look, I ended up doing lots of different jobs in TV and really meeting so many good people,
Yeah.
creating little networks, and becoming a hub for other people to say like, hey, we need a great AC, we need a great assistant editor,
Yeah.
producer, camera guy. And that's how it was done. And, there's so many people now that I work with at networks that are like, SVPs, EVPs at networks who I remember from back in the day. And I was like, oh, you were on so-and-so's desk. You were this person's assistant. That was great. And that happens all the time. People will pop up now on Zoom calls, people will pop up and then side text you and be like, oh my God, remember me from, it's like, yeah, hey, wow, I didn't know you were there. And
Of course.
it's a great little network of people. It's been so good, but it honestly has always felt like there's nothing worse than like false humility.
Yeah.
But I've seen so many people take it so seriously and then in turn take themselves so fucking seriously that they become those dicks.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've 2 kids in college now. That's the shit I hammer them with all the time. Do not let any of this shit get to your head. Like what you do is a job. It shouldn't define you. And you just like, I've been in this business for 28 years. It doesn't define me.
Yeah.
I've done so,
That's what my therapist said when I left my old work.
yes.
No, I hear you. I hear you, man.
It's like the successes I've had in television are, pale in comparison to like being a good neighbor.
Yep.
Right? Being there for your
Sure,
family,
sure.
being there for your friends. That's the shit that defines you, not that you made Comic Book Men or something.
Yeah.
That was great. Great experience. But you see the opposite of that all the time, and that's when you become a douche. You know.
That's really
Yeah,
interesting.
my pastor uses the phrase resume values versus eulogy values. Like when someone's giving you your eulogy, they're not going to talk about like, he framed these great shots of Walt and Brian arguing on season 3 of Comic Book Man. They're going to talk about what kind of person you are and how you were there for your friends, or how you were as a parent, like all these things. Like that's what you should be worried about, not what your resume is.
Yeah,
And
that's
since
well
I've
said.
been unemployed for the past 21 months, that's what I have to cling to.
I want the work that I did talked about in my eulogy.
Oh, it will be.
Yeah, I think it will be. And obituaries.
Yes.
That's cool. So, I mean, I want to go through it a little bit more. So, you're kind of, you're after Boiling Points, they must be like, well, this guy has a ton of experience on a successful show that's long term. It's not like you're just kind of jumping in and out. You're on this thing for a while. And from there, is that where it kind of just balloons out to like many different places?
Yeah, I think probably the last thing I did at MTV was a show called Scarred, if you remember Scarred,
Yeah.
which was
I think it was people that like got hurt. Like Tony Hawk was on it.
Tony Hawk was on it at one point, but it was a lot of kids.
One of my coworkers was on it.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
That was emotionally scarred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And some scars.
We had some broken dicks on Scarred.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
sure did. Yeah, we because it was all like people, anywhere from teens to Tony Hawk, like that had their injuries from extreme sports, say like
Right.
skateboarding, roller skating, blading, BMX, motocross.
Yeah.
And at the time, this was 2005, 2006. YouTube was getting up and running, I guess, and people were posting videos, and a lot of it was flip phone video, like 12-second video of my
Yes.
buddy busting his ass, his arm splitting,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we would take those, and we had the lead singer of Papa Roach was our host,
Yes.
Jacoby Shaddix.
Yes.
And so it was very kind of rock and roll, and I did development on it. Like we got it sold at MTV, and then I ran it and directed it, and we created, me and an editor, the godfather of all editors. His name is Pierre Takal. He's this 6'7" Swedish guy who meaning everyone from my generation at MTV, stole everything from.
Right.
We still can't execute like he's a fucking artiste, but he and I sat in an edit room and we developed this style of editing for Scarred, which was really intense and really good. And we sold it in the room to Tony DeSanto, who was the president of MTV at the time. He watched like half of it and turned green and was like, I can't watch any more of this, but let's do a series. This is people are
Wow.
gonna vomit. And it became like the most painful show to watch or something was our tagline. And so that really gave me some good traction with people, like as a guy who developed the show and then show ran it, and it really caught on. It was in the zeitgeist for a while.
Yes.
Like I had a 10-year-old neighbor at the time, a boy who was a skateboarder who was just like couldn't believe that was my show. And
Yes.
I was constantly showering him with all like the skate gear that came our way. And
Oh,
he loved it. It's a
yeah.
great kid.
That's amazing.
So that worked well for me. And then I ended up, when I was thinking about, driving over here, like the career, after all the initial sort of like, I'll do anything and I'll work for anybody, I had a few good opportunities at 3 or 4 of the bigger production companies in New York where I hung my hat for a while. And I was lucky enough to be one of the showrunners that was able to stay at a place for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so the first one that did that for me was a company called Left Right. And they do shows now, like they did Mob Wives and they did This American Life, that NPR show, which they brought into a TV. They did really great stuff. It was 2 MTV guys, a guy named Banks and Ken, who started this company. And they were phenomenal. And they liked me and trusted me, and they gave me an overall deal as a showrunner. Yeah. And their company grew immeasurably from there, but they gave me an overall deal, and so I was there. And so I had to do whatever came my way, and I did development stuff for them and got a couple of VH1 series shows. So I ended up doing stuff there that I never would have gotten on my own, right? Like I did a
Right.
show with Pep from Salt and Pepper,
Yeah.
and we did the development tape and got it sold to VH1, and it was Pep and her 3 girlfriends, and it was like a reality show, Sex in the City, for 4 really interesting, successful black women in New York. And it was great. It was actually the premise for Comic Book Men, the basis for how we did Comic Book Men. Well, the roots lay in this show, which was called
Sex in Red Bank.
Let's Talk About Pep. It was called Let's Talk About Pep.
Yeah.
And the narrative device we used, this was the first time we were like, we're not going to do any OTFs, like no on-the-fly interviews, right? But what we did was we taking Sex and the City as our sort of starting point, we did a brunch. And periodically throughout the season, we got them together. I forget what restaurant in New York. It was really nice. And we set up a brunch for them and shot it really well with dollies. And it was a beautiful brunch. The 4 ladies, the table was, done immaculately. And that's where we got the narrative. And that's where Comic Book Men, like creative, came from.
Because Comic Book Men reality show doesn't have a confessional. No one talks to camera. They use them at the
podcast table.
The table, talking to each other with Kevin there and relaying the stories.
Yes.
And this is kind of what happened with the brunch.
That's what we did with the brunch.
Wow.
And because it was all about them dating, it was very Sex in the City. And so they'd be having the brunch and be like, oh, so did you go out with Chuck last night? Oh, did I go out with Chuck last night? Well, let me tell you about that.
Yeah.
Look at these bite marks.
he's so amorous.
Did you see Ray's latest movie? Cut to Ray.
Cut to Ray's latest movie, just pixels.
Shit like that. Did that. Did a show with did a show called Transform Me with Laverne Cox. Okay, who's now like the trans movement's biggest. Face, like on the cover of Time or whatever. We had her on, we did the pilot for Transform Me. She had been on She had been on I Want to Work for Diddy. With Left Right.
You tried out for that show.
Right. So
I turned it down, actually. Yeah.
I want to stop working.
Oh my God, this is like
no, because I knew, because I had a lot of coworkers that were like, you know what I mean? A lot of that stuff, yeah. A lot of.
I love this uncovering this.
It's 6 degrees of Puff Daddy right now because I totally forgot. That's where we got the Laverne Cox from.
We got the title of the episode.
6 degrees of Puff Daddy.
It may get a lot of views.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not bad. That's amazing. So you're working with this company, and for people who are outside the industry, this allows you to work on multiple things at once.
Yes.
So those gaps don't really come. They say, okay, you're done with this production thing. You're going to be part of this as a blank.
Yeah. So whether or not there was work for me to do, which there always was, I did a deal with them. It was maybe, I forget what the contract, maybe it was 2 years or 3 years.
Wow, yeah.
I did a deal with them, which was great, great peace of mind for me, right?
Right.
Oh, sure, yeah.
A new dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a whole new world for me, and having peace of mind for 2 or 3 years, whatever it was great. But it also, like Chuck said, gave me the opportunity to, like, in a year, add, 6 executive producer credits to my resume, which was great. And for so many different networks and genres of television. So I have a very eclectic resume. People look at it sometimes like, wait, you did the fashion show on Bravo, and you did Dual Survival, you did Transform Me, and you did Comic Book Men. So I like right now in my life, I'm kind of known as a male factual guy.
No interjections this time.
I was a male fictional guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Were you ever? Fantasy, some might say.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That wasn't for me to say.
And so that's
Fantasy is in the eye of the beholder.
hell yeah.
Yes. So you're kind of looked at as like an everything guy.
Yeah. So I did, now, I mean, the business has gotten very weird now where people don't want to do that. People want to know like, okay, hey, so we're doing a show about fashion or whatever.
Yep.
Even though I have, a couple of fashion things on my resume from, 2006, 2008 or whatever, I'm probably not, and I really don't want to be doing those shows anyway. I kind of like the male factual stuff, but it's gotten much more, you get pigeonholed real fast. Like you do, and that's who they want. They want the guy who's done all of that or that,
Right.
So,
Or all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want all that.
Oh, you avoided Dan Schneider. Well, you at least you got Puff Daddy.
Yeah. So Left Right was great. I got to work with, I did a pilot with Donnie Deutsch over there, Donnie Deutsch, Deutsch Advertising. I did a cool pilot with him where he wanted to be I think it was called Love Chat with Donnie Deutsch. And people were calling in and yes.
I do.
Ray?
Listen, if you want to do love chat, you can't. Your last name can't be Deutsch. That is the least sexy last name I've ever.
It's not that
Deutsch.
sexy, but it's it's
Deutsch.
backed up by billions of dollars.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it gets sexy.
Sure. Deutsch.
Called Deutsch. No.
And that's why they're called Deutschmarks.
That is
that rich.
why. Yeah, I had a hand in the creation of the Deutschmark.
Yeah.
All right. So
It was like a tramp stamp. Are you familiar? Yeah.
I left Right to go over to Original Media to run Storm Chasers.
Okay.
Ah, yes. Okay.
So that was when I left Right.
Every time we catch one, another one just comes
Here's
along.
how profitable
They wouldn't
being
know
in
what to
this
do with it if
business
they
could
caught
be.
it.
But it wasn't. I didn't get a piece of this. So I'm at that company Left Right when they're just getting going.
Yeah.
And they move into bigger offices. They're doing well, and eventually, those two owners would sell that company to a big German conglomerate for $90 million. And then a lot of the smaller production companies that I would work with would get offers to be bought, and then that was sort of like became the end goal for a lot of smaller production companies. Like, let me
really?
get bought, because people were getting bought for $90 million, $150 million.
Yeah.
So those guys are
Yeah,
set.
because if you run it and it's a small production company, which is, and in all production, there's so many people that are just like it's pirates. You know what I mean? You're all pirates. Sometimes you'll work on a ship together, then you'll move to another ship. It's very similar
right.
to like stand-up comedy. I've always likened it to it. But that idea of a $90 million offer, and if you're running your own production company, you have to look at that of like, okay, I can get 90 million now, and I could go start another production company afterwards.
You can do whatever you want.
Or how long would I have to work reasonably to hit that 90 million mark?
Yeah,
And it's like, okay, so I could work for 20 years and hopefully get close to it, or just sell it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's insane. I've seen a few people that I came up through the ranks with make that kind of money.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Things like this. You just hit pay dirt sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't, but some people do. But I'm happy for them. Especially like guys like that, they worked hard, man. They took a risk early on. Let's hang up a shingle. And their first office, they had people's desks in the hallway of a walk-up, of a shitty rat-infested walk-up where you couldn't leave a ketchup packet on your desk because the rats would eat it. You come in the next day and it's all over the place.
Yeah.
And they worked their asses off, did everything.
Yeah.
And they earned it. You know what I mean? So
All things that have been said in my industry.
yes.
This is too easy.
No,
I feel bad that it started, but then it was just like there was so much low-hanging fruit. The fruit started to fall off and into my basket unintended.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I did not mean for that apple to get in there, which is also something.
More about your basket.
Yeah. This is fun.
So you go back to original. You're going to original.
That's my first experience with original
you go,
media.
You go to original media, do Storm
and I do
Chasers,
Storm Chasers.
and then from there, this is where
I heard they faked the storms.
So what
Can you tell
happened?
us?
What's that?
I heard they faked the storms. Can you tell us if that's true?
That
I heard there was some fake storms.
is not true.
Okay.
I
all right.
wish we had the power to do that, because when you're shooting Storm Chasers and there's like a tornado drought, as much as you love the people of Tornado Alley and you're glad they're not getting destroyed, you're like, we need a fucking tornado, man. Other than that, we just got a bunch of guys driving around the Midwest.
What's that? There's a category 4 and it's headed towards the orphanage. Yes.
towards the orphanage.
We got nothing. Chuck, go inside and start spinning around.
Ray's at the orphanage. Yes.
Finally.
Freedom. So you work on Storm Chasers. Are you're in the
See a
field?
kid whirling around in the sky going, this is better. I'm sorry.
So you're in the field for Storm Chasers, by the way, because the other part of this is like being part of all these worlds is fun, right?
Sure,
like, going to
sure,
shoot all this stuff and be part of this. That's really, really.
Yeah.
It just, as much as you were saying the thing about like, well, that's not who you are. Like, you are getting these experiences where you're traveling to different places and meeting people in different professions and experiencing the world via these jobs.
Yes. I mean, at this point, meaning like when I get Storm Chasers, I'm less like, I feel like less of an imposter. Like I feel like I have a body of work now. I've done a lot, and a part of that was looking around and seeing like all these people I thought were so great that I sort of learned from and learned a lot of what not to do from.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, I definitely belong here now.
Yeah,
like I
for sure.
see.
Yeah.
So I felt good, and you have to. At some point, if you're going to be a good showrunner, you have to have that kind of confidence, because I've often said, like, the one attribute you need as a good showrunner is decisiveness. And if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe you can make the right decisions, then you're on the fence. And I see, to this day, I see, you know, executives and showrunners who are very indecisive, and it's just never a good look.
Yeah, that
right?
makes sense.
It's like, so around that time, I started feeling like, okay, I know what I'm doing. And so, yeah, so I went out in the field for storm chasers. Obviously, I'd never seen a tornado before. And with my luck, the first week of filming turns out to be the what they called the super outbreak of April 27th, 2011, which was the largest tornado outbreak in 50 years. And so in the first day of my first tornado chase, I witnessed 3 EF5 tornadoes. You don't know that they're EF5s at the time they get graded, but you know they're fucking big. You're like, that's a half mile of tornado.
Yeah.
And it's unreal. It's experiences that, you know, you just never think you're going to have.
Of course, of course.
So it also, this business forced me to get out of my bubble.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like I was in some like ivory tower bubble. I was in a bubble like most like neighborhood guys are in. Like you're in your bubble and this is your town, and you don't think you're ever going to get to Antarctica or, you know, South America. You know, it's just
exactly.
like, and
because we're glossing over it a little bit, but you're doing that stuff on all these different shows. You're going all over the world.
It kind of forced me to. I'm like, it's funny because I've been everywhere, but I don't consider myself like a world traveler. Like I've traveled the world, but I don't consider myself a world traveler because I don't have a passion to travel the world. I did it for the paycheck, and the experience came with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I was like scared, but I had to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like
exactly.
I do
Yes.
the thing going to Antarctica, and my wife's like, "Why are you doing? Are you gonna do?" I'm like, "I am trying to get another job.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on a boat for a month going over the Drake Passage. I'm trying to get another job. I don't want to die on that boat." And eventually, I couldn't get another job, and I was calling other people, going like, "Hey, dude, I got a great job. Do you want this job? Because I really don't like boats."
Yeah.
I don't want to be on this boat. I don't want this. I do want to eat a penguin.
So
Now, this is the first time I can say this without joking. I have felt that way about a job, and it's not. That wasn't a child pornography joke. It was that Alaska trip where I was like, "Get me out of here! I don't want to do this anymore." I was stuck on the ship for 3 weeks. I hated it.
So Ray does stand up, and once in a while, you know, just like any job, some work is more work than fun.
Yep.
And so he does cruise ships once in a while. And one of the things he did, was it this year? Or was this year?
It was this year. Yeah, it
3
was
weeks
June.
in Alaska.
oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
What was the most nightmarish thing about it for you?
The shower. Think of the shower.
The shower was pretty rough. No, it was the fact that I was doing 7 ships in 21 days, 3 days on each ship, and it was like get on the ship, deal with a ton of nightmare stuff because no one talks to each other, and you're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Get that situated. Do 4 shows. Like, you know, your last show is at 10:30 at night. You get back to your room. You have to be ready to leave at 5 a.m. the next morning. And then there's another ton of nightmare things to deal with because nobody's talking to each other. You know, stand out in the rain for an hour with no protection, waiting to get on a ship that's right there, and they just won't let you on for no reason. Just to get in, to be like, oh, yeah, your room's not ready. Wait 4 more hours. And then find out you have like 4 shows that night, you know, like over and over and over.
The logistics of being
It was
treated
a
like
nightmare.
crew on these
it was
ships.
it was genuinely like crazy. Like the stand up was the last thing I was thinking about because it was always just like I don't know where I need to be at 4:30 a.m. tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a lot of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I get me off of this ship. I know that feeling. Yeah.
Penguin was delicious, though.
Gamey.
Yeah.
Gamey.
Yeah.
But cute.
Yeah.
Very cute. They leave the head on. So cute.
You gotta
so
you gotta
cute.
sauce it right.
They put a bow tie on it. Oh, I love that.
Adorable. Pasta, bow tie pasta. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah.
So
but,
that's killer. So, all right. So you're working at Original Media.
So I'm doing Storm Chasers, and while I'm doing Storm Chasers, it's really funny. It's sort of the lore of comic book men, right? So I'm doing
Yes.
Storm Chasers, and Patrick Reardon, who I now work for again at Jupiter, he was the head of development at Original.
Yeah.
And he was in charge of the comic book men sizzle.
Yeah.
Just called the Secret Stash at the time. So it was a very small office, and we go way back, Patrick and I. And so he was constantly calling me in and saying, like, what do you think about this? Like, you know, he was looking at the footage from the sizzle shoot,
Yeah.
which my boy Eric Duncan shot.
Hey, Eric
And
Duncan.
so he's, you know, different iterations, and I'm watching and giving thoughts on it and whatever. And he's like, man, this would be perfect for you to run if you weren't doing Storm Chasers. I'm like, well, I'm doing Storm Chasers, right?
Yeah.
So then I recommend my friend Pete, and Pete becomes the first showrunner of Comic Book Man.
Yeah.
So then Pete's working out of not only in the office, he's literally in my office because there was no more office space. I was like, he can share with me. I'm not here that much, right?
Yeah.
So now he's there, and I'm watching Comic Book Man develop in my office. The series is greenlit.
Yep.
And I'm chiming in here and there. He's like, what do you think about this? And I was like, well, what do you think about the thing we did with Pep? Because Pete directed Pep for me.
Yeah.
I was like, just take the brunch we did and move it to make it the podcast. And that's the whole thing.
That's great.
And like the genesis of it was right there.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, great, let's do that,
You know, I'm kind of surprised that more reality shows didn't differentiate in that way, where they're like, this is the world. Let's find something that's not the confessional or the testimonial booth and figure out something in this world. So the brunch makes perfect sense and the podcast table makes perfect sense, but it just wasn't something that was adopted by other reality shows as much.
I think that Comic Book Men would have been amazing if it was over a brunch every episode. You know what I mean?
Oh, no,
I want that.
Walt would be like this.
Exactly.
Like, Walt
That's
is
fun.
super smelly.
And
He hates
Ming's got
smelling
like
foods.
a bib on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you want to see those guys eating? You want to see those guys chomping down sausage and waffles? I don't.
I'll say this too, just because I think this is a fun part of the story that a lot of viewers and listeners might not know. The reason Comic Book Men came to be is because AMC was getting their biggest ratings every year was for the month of October, where they'd show all horror movies. That was their biggest ratings every year at the time. Eventually, they picked up The Walking Dead. And because they were going to make The Walking Dead, which cost a lot of money, and they were going to go to try and make original shows and stuff, they were like, we need a block of like geek programming, but we need to find shows that are cheap to make. So we want to make Pawn Stars in a comic book shop. And they talked to Kevin Smith and they said, can we shoot a sizzle reel in your store? And we're going to do a nationwide search for the people who are going to be there. And Kevin said, okay, cool. And he goes, you could just have my guys stand in for these people or be the people. It's Walt and Brian and Quinn at the time. And he sent them an episode of Tell 'em Steve Dave. And the president of AMC said, this is our cast. And that's why the sizzle got, that's why they started making the show, right?
Yep.
That's basically what happened. And Quinn was supposed to be part of the show. And from what I know, and you don't need to comment on this if you don't want to, the president of AMC hated the president of True TV. And the True TV president was like, you can't be on Comic Book Men. And that's why Quinn's not on Comic Book Men, even though Tell 'em Steve Dave is the thing that got it greenlit. Isn't that the truth?
I don't know about that.
Really?
That may be true. I just don't know that.
That's what I heard, is that the True TV president was like, he wrote this
most
thing that he
fictional
couldn't
thing
be
that's
on
been said on
it,
this
which is
episode,
why
yeah.
eventually Quinn, he was on like, what, 2 episodes, I think, over
2
the
or
course.
3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I also think that the president of True TV changed a few seasons into Impractical Jokers, and then they had more control over what
Yeah.
they did.
I
From
heard
what I know.
originally it was going to be a spin-off of Walking Dead because there's 14 baker's dozens of those shows, right? And it was really originally because there's like Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it was going to be selling The Walking Dead, right?
Selling The Walking
And it's like
Dead.
because they hold up a comic book and they're like, that's
We're
what
just
we
selling
do.
them. Yeah, that's what the original
that's
name
what it
was.
was.
Yeah, that's right.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And the problem was people complained that every episode was just people going, "Oh, it's just black and white."
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
But the
yeah.
cover is in color,
Yeah.
and then the rest is just black and white.
Yep. That was
But
it.
how?
Yeah.
there's a lot
So
of
we
that.
veered off that.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and that's a good move.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
You know,
Thank
and
you.
rumor has it you said off mic that it was the original guy. It was
Yeah, it was his
and then
idea.
you came in and fixed it. You said you fixed it.
So you're chiming in. You're
Yep.
chiming in on the edit.
Nothing
I like
was-
that I've made this interview difficult.
No, I like it.
I'm sorry.
I'm always up for a challenge here.
That's what I used to say.
Yes. Of course.
So I can't. It's. I'm sorry. Now
Things
it's
are
actually
getting
fixed.
wrong with
crazy.
you, buddy?
I know. I'm tired and I have a headache. What do you want from me? That never got me out of work.
So you
I apologize.
You're chiming in on the edit.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what happened. So there was nothing to edit, but I was chiming in on sort of pre-production on
Oh,
the
okay,
show.
the pre-production,
And
okay.
then what happened was my very, very good friend Pete shoots one scene. There was the season hadn't started yet to start filming season 1 in the shop. That hadn't started, but the guys were doing a performance at the Count Basie Theater, and Kevin was like, I want you to shoot it, or somebody was like, shoot it.
Yeah.
So then Pete goes to shoot that, which was like a sort of a pre-season shoot. And
This was an appearance by Kevin or everybody?
this was
Or tell him Steve Dave.
no, it was the cast and
Wow.
Kevin, I think. Or
Okay. I think I know what it was.
They
It was
shot something.
It was Brian. It was Kevin, Scott Mosier, Brian, and Walt on stage. That's what it was.
Okay.
And it was 2 tables, and they did half Tell 'em Steve Dave, half Smodcast live shows. I think that's what it was. Because they did one at the Count Basie around that time.
Well, I don't know what was happening on stage, but I do know that what happened was off stage, my very, very good friend Pete said something to piss off the woman who introduced Kevin to Original Media, who was also an exec producer on the series. He didn't do much, but and he offended her somehow. Whoa! Because he's got a very sort of unconventional sense of humor, very politically incorrect, and
I hate it.
right. And so he said something that was taken the wrong way. And anyway, she went back to Kevin and said, your showrunner is a sexist pig. I don't want him on the show. And Kevin said, sexist pig, he's gone. Wow. And called up Original Media and said, fire that showrunner because he's a sexist pig. And then apparently the other guys, Walt and Mike and Brian, who were also my great friends, weren't too fond of Pete either. And everyone was like, yes, goodbye, fired the showrunner. So they fire Pete, and then Patrick, who did the sizzles at Original, came to me and said, I have to fire Pete. I don't want to, but I have to. Apparently said something, and he's gone. There's no getting around it. Damn. Can you take over the show? And I'm like, again, I'm running Storm Chasers. I'm in the middle of a tornado right now. I'm running Storm Chasers. So he's like, he goes, anyway, we worked it out so that I came back from the field, but there was like a week or so where I was not able to do it. And I'm like, I'll get familiar with everything and I'll do it. And I'll straddle the end of post on Storm Chasers and the beginning of production on Comic Book Men. And I'll run them together. And so that's what happened. And then it was like a week before I came, which we talked about on Tales, where the guys always loved that story of the guy with the black scarves who was like, so there was a guy who was like temporarily running things and was insisting that they do the OTF interviews, even though I was like, don't do the OTFs.
Yeah.
And then he was doing them and the crew was calling me and going like, dude, he's got us doing OTFs. And I'm like, that's all going to end when I get there. Just fucking keep
And
your
then
head
you
down.
show up and your hair is like straight out, like it's been in a wind tunnel, and everybody's like, "What's up?" And you're like, "Storm chasers."
Came in.
Still a little dizzy.
Whoa.
I was a mess. I was a wreck. I was half
Sorry.
dead.
I still have my tornado legs. I'm sorry.
Tornado legs.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up on. So the beginning of Comic Book Men, as I was in the field directing, I was watching cuts and giving notes on the cuts of Storm Chasers, and then that became my life because once Storm Chasers, and that ended up being the last season of Storm Chasers, but then I ended up getting on Dual Survival at the same production company,
Right.
and then getting roped back into Comic Book Men again, and so then there was like 5 to 6 years of my life where I was running Dual Survival and running Comic Book Man at the same time. And it honestly, without a doubt, almost killed me. All kidding aside, that kind of workload not only nearly got me divorced, nearly killed me because I was half dead all the time. I was impossible to live with. And I was just round the clock, Comic Book Man, Dual Survival. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah.
But as I like to say to my wife, well, it was a lot of work, but we're living in it now. I was able to buy a house. You know what I mean? Like, I could not turn that offer down because it wasn't going to come again. And it was such a, listen, what can I say? With all humility, it was a financial boom for me. Like, I wasn't going to be in that position again where I had 2 shows happening at the same time and I could earn money off of both of them.
Because you get invested in these shows as working on them at a high position, and some shows do okay and they don't get picked up again. Yeah, and you got to start over. But if you get shows that are doing well enough to continue to be picked up, that are going to last for seasons, you just don't want to let go of them.
Couldn't let go.
Right, that's what it is.
Couldn't let go.
That's
so
awesome.
I did it. It was insane.
Yeah,
but I would use a lot of the same crew, like Tom Mum, who who did audio on Comic Book Men, and Schneider, who was our DP. I would take those guys into the jungle on the off season. So
Yeah.
I had this whole crew that would be like, 1 minute we're dodging snakes and alligators, and the next minute we're hanging out in a comic book shop. It was an amazing run for all of us.
Yeah, that's the other thing. That's the other side of this, is that this kind of work, the creative work, sometimes.
Get him was at both.
Yeah.
Get him was at both. Yeah, Comic Book Man was his job and the jungle is his home.
I just hear like jungle sounds, like a typical Indiana Jones scene, and then you just hear like in the background, like, how's it stinking? And you're like,
Get him.
Bagheera's like, he won't leave.
don't move. He senses motion.
Get him sight. It's based on motion. That's fun, but it's amazing. And during comic, it's funny because you grow up in Jersey and you just so happen to be on a show, luckily, that shoots in Jersey. So
that's
you get to
huge.
kind of stay close to home when you're working on Comic Book Man. But they moved, as far as I know, they moved to like the beach in a monstrous house for the whole crew every summer, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had my own house.
Yeah,
I didn't
right.
live with the crew.
Well, I know that you rented some houses. Like
Yeah, I rented a bunch of houses. The crew. My stipulation was, look, I'm not abandoning my family for the whole summer. I'm going to need my own condo
Yeah.
with space enough for me and my wife and kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Because I'm also, by the way, running dual survival.
Yeah.
So like even in this, I'm not going to the beach. Like when these
Yeah,
guys are
yeah.
hanging out, I'm in the house working.
You're in editing bay.
nonstop.
Yeah.
I remember we're doing Comic Book Men and then whatever, shooting all day. And then at night, I have a crew in Turkey, a dual survival crew in Turkey. And I'm watching TV at night, and all of a sudden, there's the attempted coup going down in Turkey.
Yeah.
And there's like murders in the airport, and my crew is in the airport hotel waiting, go to the airport to fly home, but now they can't, and they're trapped in their hotels.
Yeah.
And I'm dealing with this round the clock for a while, not sleeping. And it was just hysterical because I'm watching the news to get thing, and my wife and kids are like, we're going to go get ice cream. I'm like, well, I'm not getting ice cream. My crew's about to be executed. We've got a situation going on.
So bring some back for
Yes, I was saying, if they have mint chocolate chip, I'd like that. Please. That's what I always eat during coups.
You know my coup food. That's crazy though. It's awesome. And then you make a lot of friends on Comic Book Men. You become friends with all the guys.
Oh my God.
Because this is Comic Book Men ended in 2017. So it's been 7 years.
Yeah, they said we got him elected. We did it. We don't need to do the show anymore. Yeah.
But you're still friends after all that time. And so you're still working together on this thing. So what do you do after when Comic Book Men ends? Are you still working on the other show?
No, I think Duel ended before Comic Book Men.
You're right. Okay.
So then
And Comic Book Men getting canceled, to people that don't know, was kind of a surprise when it.
it was a surprise, yeah. But I always hedged my bets. Like I never took it for granted.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just had a weird feeling that we weren't coming back. So I took a show running job with a different company. And I did a show called Master of Arms, which was basically a ripoff of Forge and Fire, which was doing
Blood
really
Blacksmith
well
show. Yeah.
That's cool.
on history. So this was Discovery's version, but it wasn't just blades. It was, antique weapons. We had people making, blunderbusses and pistols and cannons and crossbows and stuff. So that was fun. That was a different kind of show for me. It was a big show, like big elimination show. Like I directed some of the field stuff, but I had to hire a real director who had done those big, Food Network challenges and like multicam director like that. So it was actually probably the biggest show I did in terms of crew.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was, I don't know, we started with, 20 contestants or whatever it was. It was one of those big shows, but it was a really cool experience. I got to design a whole forge.
Yeah.
And I brought in my favorite DP, and we worked on, just building out the workstations and everything. And I really, that kind of detail was great for me, like just how the hammers are set up and the tongs and where this is and how,
Same.
Yeah. It was very cool. Well, yes.
So sorry.
The hammers and the tongs. Yeah. Did you like the tongs, Ray?
After the hammers, you're happy to have the tongue.
You're ready to get tongs?
Yeah.
At least you got to work with your favorite DP.
And in the DP scenes.
Yeah. And the TP,
Yes.
the QP.
That's
PP.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, of course. That's great.
I never did.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that. I never
You're not
did.
going to find it. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
You're not going to find it.
You'll never find one clip of that happening.
So that's amazing.
Because Nashel blacked them all out.
Yeah, same
Record
thing.
Record play. Record play.
So that you have like all this experience under your belt, and you're kind of like you're a jack of all trades, kind of at this point, and you're also like a not storied, but like very experienced showrunner, very experienced with all these different these different directions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're doing all these different shows in different places and kind of in different environments, obviously shooting in the store is so different than shooting in Turkey or wherever. What happens from there? Because I know that you end up at Jupiter.
Yeah, what happens is, so I hung my hat at Left Right for a while, then I hung my hat at Original Media for a long while.
Yeah.
And then so this show, Master of Arms, was with a company called Matador. And the guy who started Matador was the number 2 at Original Media, and then at some point left and started his own company.
Yeah.
And so I did Master of Arms, and then, when you're there, and this is what's hard for a lot of young people now, or even people my age, that you're not in an office every day.
Yeah.
When you're in an office every day, opportunities just present themselves.
Yes.
So you're walking down the hall, and
Right.
you're like, hey, I want to show you a sizzle. And you watch the sizzle, you're like, all right, I think this is close to selling. You're going to run it if this happens. All right, great.
Yeah.
So, I'm at Matador, and Master of Arms leads to a series I did for A&E called Hero Inc., which was at a law enforcement run tattoo shop in Houston. It was owned by a sergeant on the Houston PD, like 30-year veteran, and they specialized in doing tattoos for military and first responders.
Yeah.
So we went in, we redid his whole shop because it was cool, but it was like janky.
Yeah, of
So
course.
we're like, we're gonna do.
It wasn't great for filming.
We're gonna make it better than it is.
Yeah.
And we're gonna pay for it, and then you can keep it. But he was really
Yeah.
Yeah.
reluctant to have us go in and destroy his life's work.
Yeah, of
But we
course.
did it better. So that was cool. That was like, I don't know, 8 or 10 episodes for A&E, who I worked with before, and they were good to work with. So, and then from there, still at Matador. What was great about Matador is they gave me a little leeway between gigs. Like I finished up Hero Inc., and we were waiting for this thing that ended up being my COVID job. Thank God I had it, called Man vs. History for the History Channel.
Oh yeah.
But they didn't want to lose me for that, and so they were great. They gave me some money to keep me going, and that's where I did my one and only film. Basically, I did a short doc.
Yes, I remember this. Tell us about this.
I did a short doc. I met a guy. We were shooting a sizzle with people who wrangled snakes for their venom.
Yeah.
Which is apparently more expensive than gold.
Yeah.
Right. So venom, they use it a lot in medical procedures and stuff. Right. So we were with this group of people, I think in Alabama, who were harvesting snakes for their venom. The series didn't sell, but there was a guy they hired as a consultant down there who was like the king of all snake wranglers, named Jackie Bibby, the Texas Snake Man, who I remembered from the Guinness Book of World Record books. You'd see the guy in the Guinness Book of World Records periodically for holding the most rattlesnakes in his mouth at one time.
I had a similar record.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could rival.
I mean,
him.
I've served this up to you.
Yeah, I know. This is. I don't.
How many
even wanna-
rattlesnakes did
I
you-
don't want to make these jokes,
What's
but they're
interesting-
just there.
So you were doing it, and obviously it wasn't rattlesnakes, but you had a rattle. Remember that?
Yeah.
Because you started.
Oh,
slow,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Wow. I just sat on a joke, and it ain't going nowhere. It's just for me to know. Jackie Baby, he was like 70-something years old. At the time, I think he was like 69 when I met him.
Yeah. No, we're gonna let that
Come
one
on,
go.
come on.
No, that's
Too easy.
Too easy.
Yeah. There's too easy, but then there's like
and I'm-
too easy. You know.
And I'm driving. He was the consultant. He wasn't even on camera for this. He had a little on camera part. And I'm driving around with him, and he can't stop me. He's driving a big, long white limousine. That's the Snake Man limousine. He's got one prosthetic leg due to a rattlesnake bite.
Right.
He's scarred up and gnarled up. It's all over. He's got this unbelievable face. And I'm like, I remember you from the Guinness Book of World. He's like, yeah, I got this. And he's such a character. And he would drive me to whatever forest we were going to, and tell me his stories all fucking day.
Yeah.
He was a great. I'm like, has anyone ever? I know you did a lot of TV, whatever. Has anyone ever sat you down and gotten your story? And he was like, no. I'm like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do that. Right?
Yes.
So I meet him out in Rising Star, Texas. look it up. Central Texas Rising Star. And I take my DP, Jaron Berman, who I love. And we go out and we film for a few days with him, long interview. We do a small snake event. Anyway, I end up cutting a film with him, a short film, and end up like submitting it to, that was so not my world, but there was a guy in-house at Matador who was like their film guy who was like advising me on this, and he would look at early cuts and say like, do this. Originally I wanted to do a feature length, and he's like, I think this works great, because they're like, they're not giving you any more money.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need more money to shoot. He's like, they're not going to give you any more money, dude. He's like, you got a great short. Just do it as a short.
Yeah.
And so his name was Jack, and he was a great advisor for me into that world. That's what I mean. Like I was in the office, and like I was able to really learn about this thing I had no idea about. I never thought I would make any kind of doc film or whatever.
Yeah.
But I ended up putting it together and submitting it, and we got into a bunch of festivals. I ended up winning one award. I won a People's Choice at some Texas Film Festival, something like that.
Yeah.
So.
I watched it. It was awesome.
Thank
I loved
you.
it. I thought it was great.
Thank you. It was great. And so, hats off to Matador for allowing me to do that and keeping me around. And look, they gave me $9,800 to make it. And I did it, and I cut it, and
That's
Jaron
great.
shot it. It was a 2-man crew.
Yeah.
I did a lot of filming on B-cam and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a great experience. And that, that came from being in an office with people and building those relationships and getting
Yes.
trust from them and saying, do it. And to be valued by guys like that was like, we don't want you to not be able to feed your family while we're waiting for the green light.
Yeah.
We're going to pay you. I was like, man, you guys are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And, I'd gone above and beyond for them many times. And that's how it would. And the president of the company, the owner of the company was a guy I came up with in the halls of VH1. So we knew each other since we were in our mid-20s, And so that, to me, is the greatest thing about this business. The people I've been able to meet, the people I learned from, the people I've been able to mentor and like give their own careers to and say like, you're going to be great. Like the DP I just mentioned was my PA on the Unwrapping Macy's. The first years I ever ran, I had this PA they threw at me who I ended up seeing like pick up cameras, and he was telling the DP how to put settings on his camera and how to do a green screen light for a green screen background and stuff. And I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
And now, I gave him the DP job on Scarred, and he's like, I have a Steadicam. I'm like, you have a Steadicam?
Yeah, right.
And now he's like my go-to DP. He and Schneider, like the two guys I love and I always use and always recommend. And that's been
Rob
the thing.
Yeah, Rob Schneider. Yeah. No, that's amazing.
You can do it.
It's funny because that's one of the things about the current direction of the way media has gone, which is like a lot more independent people making their own stuff. And that's the world that I live in. That's where I'm a filmmaker full time, and that's how I make my money. But what I've completely missed out on is the opportunity to really work in a setting like that, like an office where there's other people around, and I get to see other projects and chime in on other projects. It's always me going to shoot a thing by myself and taking it back to my house and editing it alone. And that's all. And that's it. And that's one of the things that has broken down with this new system is that there is no collective, and it's hard to move up and move around and try different things when you're just this person and there's no one around you working with you on that stuff.
It's difficult. I feel for the people, because that position that you're in is the position that I see people in now since COVID, since the office is closed. It's really weird. A lot of companies don't even have a central office anymore. They have like an office like this that they just keep all of their drives in.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone taps into that from there.
Yeah.
The office culture was something I really loved about it. And that was why, like, when we first met, I felt like Chuck is good. Chuck is talented. Chuck gets it. I want to bring Chuck into this world if I can and let him have the benefits of building a network of people who are just connected to each other for everything. So, but also, I've told Chuck before, like I'm going to say almost a dinosaur in this business at this point, and everybody that's my age in this business, we all turn to each other and go like, when are we completely irrelevant? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we do have experience, but also we're used to working in a system that is sort of rigid and is very dependent on like a mothership, like AKA the network.
Yes.
And then further a production company. And so you've got all these gatekeepers that you need to work with. And I look at Chuck and I always say to Chuck, like, I need to learn how to become one of these YouTube millionaires.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to do that or what to do. It's very foreign to me.
Yes.
And I've always been sort of a Luddite, you know what I mean? So I kind of, the technology I know, but like I've been editing on Avid since like 1996, but I won't even learn Premiere. Which a lot of people are
That's what I use.
I can't use it. I can't do it. It's new.
And I saw behind the scenes footage from Comic Book Men, and you were cranking the camera.
Yeah, I prefer to crank it.
The big puff light.
And it's weird too whenever you do interview stuff, you always ask the question and then go immediately back under the hood. Yeah.
That's what I mean. I'm old school.
Yeah.
Right.
So imagine me trying to work now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Beret.
It's tough.
We're gonna do an interview. See, yeah.
That's my era.
It's tough.
See, mine is, and then
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're even older school than I am.
Somebody has to play piano while they watch it.
Come on, get with it, man. We've got talkies now.
But it's tough that's the pros and cons of both sides of that, because in the independent world, it's like, yes, if you find an audience, you can self-fund your thing without waiting for a green light. But you're just working on that thing, and the people involved in that don't really get to branch out, because all the people at the top care about is they're the individual creators now. So all they care about is their thing, and that's it. That's the only thing you're a part of. So it's like pros and cons on both sides. It's tough.
It's tough to take like a chance for a guy like me who's got like 2 kids in college now.
Yeah.
If I'm looking down the barrel of some showrunner money, I can't say, well, no thanks. I'm going to start my own YouTube channel and try to get some views and likes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know.
Second of all, I don't know what that content would be.
Yeah. I know.
It's, so but the well is drying up. Like we've all been talking about it. I get emails every day from showrunners who are like, I literally will take assistant story producer. What do you got?
Yeah.
And it's fucking, it's sad and it's humbling and it makes me feel so grateful that I'm working.
Right.
Like grateful.
Well, so is this where basically you make the transition to Jupiter?
Yeah, I do.
Sorry, real quick before that. Did you do elephants in the room with Walt?
No.
All right.
It was.
I
So
knew
what that
somebody
is?
affiliated with Comic
So
Book
what
Men,
that is
yeah.
how when Comic Book Men would shoot in Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash in New Jersey, you guys would install lights and stuff like that in the store, and then when you weren't shooting, you didn't have the lights there, right?
That's right.
So while they were there, Walt paid the production, which was like Tom Mum, I think, was the director, and there was a bunch of
that's what I was
people
thinking of.
that worked on Comic Book Men to shoot a game show in the store one time. And so I think Nashel might have been a little bit of too high of a pay grade to bring in as a director on that, but I was the editor on that show, and they did it because they had the production in the store at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a while ago. It was 2017, I believe.
Yeah.
So it was. Or 2000, it was shot in 2016. We released in 2017. But yeah, so you're almost making the jump to Jupiter.
Yeah. The last thing I did at Matador. So after the Snake Man, we end up getting this show called Man vs. History, greenlit for history.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like 3 days later, it's like, hey guys, guess what? We're locking down the world. Nobody's allowed to work. No one's allowed to move.
Yeah.
And then we all thought it was going away. And then to my surprise and delight, they called and they're like, well, can you make it work without minimal plane travel? Was making people nervous. Okay, minimal plane travel, that's fine. So we ended up doing the show. There was a host built around this host named Bill Lepp, and we would basically go around the country deciding if historical myths were true or false. That basic concept.
Yeah.
So it was good. It was look, I like to read histories, biographies, so I had a good basis for this show.
Sure.
And I enjoyed it. The research aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so we did it. That was, thank God, my COVID job. What was very interesting is I couldn't get a lot of my go-to crew.
Right.
Because everybody under 30 was afraid to go out on a travel show. It was only the middle-aged guys with kids and mortgages who would work. It was really funny.
Yeah.
So many people turned it down.
Yeah.
They were like, fuck that, dude. I'm not going, well, you can shoot in West Virginia and Kentucky and Texas and Arizona. But fuck that, dude. I'm not going around those heathens.
Yeah.
So, but I would call the people with mortgages and kids. And they were like, oh, yeah, I don't care. Whatever. I'll go anywhere.
Cough down my throat.
Oh, yeah. So that was, yeah, here we go. Take it. Take it away, Ray.
I'm at a point now where I just need to go,
Yeah.
and then we're good.
Virus born.
Yeah.
So that was a great COVID job. That was my last thing we did for history, and it aired. It didn't whatever, it didn't make a blip, and people were concerned about a lot bigger things. And it wasn't great. Yeah. But it wasn't great because we couldn't even it was really difficult to produce. We needed to bring experts in, and people would cancel. We were going to shoot a whole thing in Boston, and Boston was code red.
Yeah.
We couldn't go to Boston. We would lose people and locations were dropping all the time.
Yeah.
So that was a tough thing to do, but thank God it employed us all for a long time, and my editors were working. It was a gift from God. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So we did that, and just as that was wrapping, my old buddy Patrick Reardon, it all comes back to that network. Patrick Reardon, who I gave his first editing job in New York to on Scarred. He's about a decade younger than I am. Mm-hmm. So I gave him his first editing job in New York, and then worked with him. He wanted to, do more like what I did, and supervise and produce, and I put him on that track as well. And then he called me out of nowhere, and I knew he'd been, president. He did great. He was pretty high up in the Weinstein organization and got out unscathed.
Yeah, right.
And then he went to work for Jay-Z's company.
Yeah.
So he was doing great. He was a real mover and shaker.
Yeah.
And he called, and I knew he was just, made president of Jupiter right before COVID. And he called me up. He's like, hey, what would it take to get you on staff? Like, I need another grown-up, and I need someone I can trust. And the headquarters is in Knoxville. He's like, but I really want to build up this New York office again. I want to get more stuff coming out of the New York office. Mm-hmm. And I need someone like you. What would it cost me? And meanwhile, I'm looking at the current show drying up and nothing out there.
Yep.
So I was like, basically, you can have me for free.
Great
minimum wage.
Great negotiation technique.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't. I took full advantage.
Yeah.
So we did a deal. And I was like, staff job. This is amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. And you get to work on many shows at once in different roles,
Many
right?
shows
You were
and
producing.
benefits. So I'm basically over there as an executive producer. And so I ended up working a bunch with development. I immediately got like 4 sizzle reels done. 3 of them came to life with, series or specials. And the big series that came out of it for me over there was Big Little Brawlers.
Yeah, so it's funny. So what happened was we started working together through Tell 'em Steve Dave on Tales from Behind the Fake Counter. I was directing it, and you were kind of seeing the stuff that I saw that I was putting together, and you thought it was pretty fun and pretty good. And so when they were going to make Big Little Brawlers, which was not the name at the time, it was shooting for the Micro Wrestling Federation about the little people wrestlers. And you were like, do you want to go to Ohio and shoot part of this sizzle reel? Mm-hmm. And you hit me up, and so you guys told me I could bring an assistant. So I asked Brad. Brad said no.
I did.
I asked Ray. He had a gig. Mm-hmm. And we also thought it'd be funny to have Ray shooting with those guys.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. And then so I asked Brad again, and Brad said yes. And we went.
Was it the fear of little people? What was the no?
Falling in love.
Fear of falling in love. I worked at a university at the time in the housing office, and our move-in day was Tuesday. First day of classes was Wednesday. Very busy days for us. Thursday, we would be leaving for the shoot. And I'm like, the office is just too busy. I just can't leave. And then, like, I don't know what a decision higher up was made that made my life immeasurably worse. There was no apology. There was no understanding towards me. And I'm like, all right, I've got PTO. You can't tell me I can't take a personal day. That's in the union rules. I'm going to take a personal day on the second day of classes and third day of classes, even though like I feel bad for my coworkers. And like I talked to my friend April that I worked with. She's like, yeah, I cried both days. Because it's so overwhelming because we have so many students coming in and their meal plan doesn't work, or they didn't get their bill cleared up until now, and now they need housing, and we don't have so we're trying to figure. And the joke was on me because the next year she was at a different school and I worked those days by myself, and I'm like, I understand why you cried now. Yeah. But I had said, what can I really bring? I don't have a ton of technical expertise.
But he was coming with me as an assistant, so it was kind of to help facilitate different things.
During that trip, Chuck had said every time, like the closer you get to a camera,
the more I see you as Sloth from the Goonies. I just knew he didn't know how to do anything. But he could help hold the boom mic, and he could put stuff together, and he could set up tripods and stuff. Yeah. And he was coming as an assistant. I wasn't getting it wasn't like find another camera person. It was find an assistant.
Ray has that camera experience.
Yes.
Another friend of ours, Brian Lau, has that experience.
Yes.
And so I was option number 1 and then option number 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Because no one else in Rhode Island had had that weekend free. And
well, it was someone I had to trust too. Yeah. You know what I mean? That was the thing, is like I think that when you're going to work with someone, even if I knew someone who was like, I'm like, this guy knows how to use like film equipment. If I didn't know if I could trust the person or if he was dependable, he was off my list. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be higher on the list than the technical skill. But that was super kind of you to ask me to do that and to invite me to do that. Cause like, that's an important thing now on my resume is that I went and helped shoot the sizzle reel for a show that got picked up and put on Discovery Channel.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
Yeah, no, that's the kind of work we always have these discussions, but that work is out there. It's just like, it's actually not out there as much as it was.
Yeah.
But it's out there, and oftentimes it could lead to, bigger things. Like if you didn't have your whole world going here, I could have found a place for you on Brawlers, but it was a big commitment. It was like you got to live in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee for
I know.
8 weeks.
Yeah, right. No.
You're what you've been able to do on your own, basically, what you've built, and obviously you've got your own network of people around you now, is admirable. And you're very good at it. I mean, the minute I came up to do that first Tales podcast, in my mind, I'm picturing like a production.
Yeah, right.
And then it's Chuck and his girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And Chuck setting up all the cameras, setting up all the mics, wiring everything.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the product looks great. He made that show open. I'm like, who is this fucking genius? How do I get some of Chuck in my life?
You know what? You can have him. We'll be fine.
I'm proud of the show open, and I think the show looks great. No, I'm really happy, and it's funny because I will say I did try to up my game for shooting with Nashel because we were already doing shows for the Patreon, and then Walt's like, we're going to have Brian Nashel, the director of Comic Book Men, come in and host this show. And I was like,
You're like, the boiling points guy?
I was like, well, I want to make this a little bit higher production. So I came up with that intro, which I'm really proud of, and I think came out really, really pro. And I want to have packaging. I want to do all this like packaging that kind of pulls the show together where it's going to feel like there's an actual real feel to the production to it, like the credits and all the lower thirds and all that kind of stuff matched and everything. And I was like, I need to make that like a priority, pulling Nashel into this world. And Walt told me right after we shot the first couple episodes, we were walking back because at one point in time, we were going between 65 Broad Street and 35 Broad Street in Red Bank. And he said, I pulled you into this show because like I wanted you to become friends with Nashel and I wanted him to see your work so you guys could start working together. And I was like, that's amazing. I appreciate it. I mean, I'm lucky to have people like that, kind of people like Walt, people like you, pulling me into more stuff and pushing me along. You know what I mean? Like that's a big part of it.
What's interesting, it's like a perfect example of like the mantra that I give my kids all the time, which is just do good work.
Yeah.
Right? Just do good work. And it gets noticed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you did shitty work, I would have noticed that too.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
No, exactly. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. But that was a huge opportunity. I really appreciate it. We had a lot of fun, and it was a really interesting thing because I was doing the sizzle, and we had a bunch of meetings about it beforehand with Jupiter, like all of us on Zoom and stuff like that. That was back when I had my office in Rhode Island that we used to record the podcast at. And I remember being like, man, I really got to meet this group of people. And I think it was probably 8 people at the time that I was meeting because it wasn't the full cast and it was some people that didn't end up on the show. And I was like, I really got to become friends with them immediately or at least comfortable with them to be able to direct and produce on the sizzle reel while we're there because we were going to do a bunch of the OTFs as well with every single person. And I remember one of the main guys was Flying Ryan who didn't end up in the show.
No.
And it was like, I remember it was like, this guy's the asshole of the show. Like, see what you can get out of him, try to get some. And I interviewed him, like, one-on-one, and he cried in his interview. Remember that?
Phenomenal interview. It was great. Amazing.
Yeah, it was. I was like...
I'm holding the boom, and I'm sobbing.
Dude.
It was... And I mean,
couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
having the experience of being like, I got hired to shoot a sizzle reel for a real production company. I'm flying to Ohio. I'm meeting these people. I'm setting up. I'm capturing the ring in that big venue with all the sand in multiple places. I have to interview this guy. He's the asshole of the show. I got to make him cry. It's like, it's really weird, but you feel like you're like, I'm legitimately part of a thing. You know what I mean? And then he ended up like not being on part of the show, which was crazy.
Dude, he you know how Flying Ryan?
And I liked him. I liked him as a guy.
Flying Ryan ended up meeting some girl. I don't know if he met her at a show or whatever, okay? Then he robs the take from that night and skulks off in the middle of the night with all the money they made from that venue.
Oh, he robbed the door money?
Yep.
Whoa!
Yeah.
He is the asshole of the show.
Yeah, that was not reality show bullshit. He was an asshole, and then he went down to like North Carolina, got married, joined a different wrestling league. But he is persona non grata at the Micro Wrestling Federation.
Damn. And then, of course, I mean, we met everybody. Everyone was awesome. I loved everybody we met. But like Ivar was the standout, who is like the smallest guy, and he has this condition where his bones. He's like Mr. Glass from Unbreakable.
Yeah.
Essentially, he's broken like 76 bones. His grandmother broke his leg when she was changing him one time. And he's still part of the show. We just saw him in Staten Island. He's fucking the coolest guy in the world, the nicest, most positive guy ever.
Osteogenesis imperfecta.
Yep.
It's
Type 3.
Yeah, and he's the best guy ever.
Yeah.
He's the nicest guy, and everyone was
amazing.
a character. It was so much fun. We had a ton of fun with everybody.
did.
We were like literally friends and joking around with them. We're all in headlocks. At one point, I had to travel. I was like, let me travel in the van. I don't know if you saw the footage, but we had a big discussion about the M word in the van.
Oh, yeah, I saw it all.
About all that stuff. And Brad was on the side of us driving the rental car with all the gear in it. And me and all the little guys are just making fun of Brad and throwing insults his way. And like, I got him in headlocks and stuff like that. They're crawling all over me.
Oh, yeah, dude.
It was so fun, dude.
It was a blast.
It was so much fun. And then I thought, I'm like, I know the deal that this many sizzles get made and this many get picked up. Like such a small amount of them get picked up that I'm like, yeah, it'd be awesome if this got picked up, but I don't expect that. And then for it to end up on Discovery is amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
then
Good.
you-
I'm glad you got that experience. It was the first series that Discovery bought in 2 years.
Wow.
Nobody, I mean, other production companies
Whoa.
were calling us and congratulating us. Like, how the fuck did you do it?
That's what Quinn said, because I'm also at the time when this got picked up. That's when I'm already working with Quinn from Practical Jokers more, and he's hiring me to come direct another sizzle for him, which is at Warner, which is a parent company of Discovery, and he's like, "Are you sure they got picked up by Discovery?" And I'm like, he's like, "There's a lot of shakeups going on over there. You're positive?" And I'm like, I'm like, I had the text from you, so I'm like, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I heard that the plan is after a couple of seasons of Little Brawlers, they're going to do a crossover with Storm Chasers.
Big little storm chaser.
Yeah.
Hang on to your hats.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Ivar, no!
Yeah. He's made of glass.
This is awesome.
That's what he would say. That's what he would say.
Metal.
It's not a bad pitch, man.
Big little storm chaser.
Hell yeah.
It's not a bad pitch.
Yeah.
Wheels are turning.
Because like a category 1 is like terrifying. You know what I mean?
10.
Yeah.
Everything's times 10.
That's what I'm saying. Well, you hear somebody like, "Oh my God, I think the levee's broken." You're like, "No, no."
I like it.
I like it too. But yeah, so it was amazing.
You only
so,
need one rowboat. So dumb. It's so dumb.
So you're still at Jupiter, and you're still getting to oversee a bunch of stuff and get your input on all these different things.
Yeah.
And this is where you are now, man.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's a weird time in this business, and you know, I honestly, it's every morning I wake up so grateful that I have a job because there's a group of people I came up with for the last 25, almost 30 years now.
Yeah.
That are kind of being phased out. It seems. It's
Yeah, a ton of TV people in Atlanta are now just like, so we moved to Atlanta to work for TV, to work for the industry. And now it's all drying up.
Yeah.
So what's up with the new Netflix studios in Jersey? Is that like going to be a huge thing? It seems like it's. Do you know about it?
Yeah.
It's like monstrous.
down the road there, down the road from the stash.
It's monstrous. They're like basically like Hollywood East,
Yep.
right? That's
Yep.
what they're trying to build.
Yep.
Okay.
For production, which is, I mean, lucky for people that live around here. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Do you know that place where they're doing it?
No.
It's literally on the same block as the stash. You just have to drive through, Red Bank and over. We scouted it. That's where we were going to do the Batmobile versus the Black Beauty race.
Oh, on
Yeah,
Comic
it was
Man.
an old army barracks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes perfect
Massive
sense.
amount. It's like a little town.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Massive.
How do we get involved in that?
I don't know, man.
Oh man, season 7. It's like Emily goes to New Jersey. So Emily goes to Paris. It was a show. I don't know. It's a terrible show. I don't know.
What I honestly, what I think is going to happen, and I don't know how you guys feel about this because we haven't really talked about this exactly, but all these independent people are making their own stuff and they're making money doing it. However, I think the people at the top of all these independent productions, like let's use Tell 'em Steve Dave as an example. Walt is kind of the main guy. And he's super organized and scheduled, and he only makes promises that he can keep, and he has a great team of people. That's awesome. That makes up 1%. Most of these independently run people that are doing podcasts and YouTube shows or whatever, the people at the top are not like that.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is gonna just go away. Like on any given day, one of those will just be like, we're not doing this anymore because this person had this thing happened or this person got canceled or whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that more of the industry people are going to come to the independent side and make higher quality independent projects. That's what I think personally.
Here's what scares me about it and bums me out, and we've talked about this before. I use the analogy of like for as far as a stand-up comic looking at the industry, right?
Yeah.
And the analogy I used is like in the, let's say, the early 2000s back, 90s, 80s, all that stuff. If a comic hits, they get a sitcom, right? Or whatever. And that sitcom, it gives them their big paycheck, their bread and butter, and then they hire comedians for the writer's room.
Like Roseanne
comedy
hired
writers.
Norm Macdonald.
Norm Macdonald had early on in his career was able to do what he did because he was in the writer's room at Roseanne, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got all the crew people and all those things. So this one person popping employs a whole cadre of people.
Yes.
But now it's like the example I used was like Theo Vaughn.
Or
Is
Tuesdays
a
with
comic
Stories,
who hits.
maybe.
Yeah.
Sure. And instead of the show that allows a bunch of people in the industry to continue to work, it's just like that one guy and then like his maybe there's one person shooting and one person doing like post and editing and stuff like that, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so you had 140 people
Yes.
being employed by this thing, and now you have 4 people being employed by this thing.
Exactly.
And it bums me out.
It's tough.
Supremely.
And I do really think, just from working behind the scenes, I've worked with a lot of different people on an independent level and on a little bit bigger as well. I don't think that the people at the top of those have enough experience, and even I don't know. I don't want to be insulting, but I don't think they have the ability to really run it in a way that something needs to be run like a business. I think a lot of people are just like, what? Yeah, whatever. Yeah, and I think a lot of people, especially with comedy being such a big part of it, it's so flimsy. It's so flimsy, and I always say, people are going to come over to Patreon that are like Amy Schumer is going to come to Patreon. There's going to be some version of this where she's like, I'm going to put $25,000 worth of production money into everything I do on Patreon. And their Patreon's going to be bringing in $1.5 million a month. And they're going to be dominating this thing with people who have the experience and who bring over this bigger production, this bigger crew. And there's going to be, instead of there being huge production companies and independent creators, there's going to be a merge, and there's going to be a big middle that I think is going to take it over. That's what I think is going to happen, because I think that there's a lot of people that are the independents that are making a lot of money that just going to keep dropping like flies, where it's going to be like they're not going to be interested anymore. It's going to be too hard to keep up with. And like I said, there's some outliers. Like Tell 'em Steve Dave is really successful. The Are You Garbage guys, I think, are very dedicated and successful. They have a Patreon. They make $120,000 a month at Are You Garbage just from doing their podcast. And like, they're killer. They've been nonstop scheduled, organized for years and years and years. But that is the very, very small minority, I believe. In my opinion, that's where I think it's going to go. Just from my perspective of who I've worked with, you know?
I think an asteroid is going to hit the Earth.
Yeah.
I tend to side with Brad here.
Yeah. The sooner the better, we say.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Do you think it's going to trend more towards the independent? Think there's going to be a middle, or it's going to go back to big stuff?
Yeah, I don't look. I think just the nature of television is or the future of television is in question. So let's not even call it television, because who's buying the television, right?
It's media.
Right. So, but the nature of, I was going to say but the nature of the places where you consume your media.
Consistent media, let's call it. Yeah,
you know,
series.
it's going to need content. So,
Yes.
and I think that as much as, you know, the YouTube, you know, one camera and a dream stuff happens, even though those streamers are going to need quality productions,
That's what I
that
think.
still need professionals to execute them.
Exactly.
So when I look at things like, you know, look at what's on Amazon Prime and Netflix, whatever, I look at obviously the stuff that I could be a part of, right? So
Yes.
whenever there's a new survival, okay, they're doing survival. They're in this game. They did, you know, a friend of mine did a sort of comic booky show at some point, you know, that was shot down in Tennessee. So I think that the people that work in my business, maybe it won't be as many of us, we can still have a life and produce content. It'll just be distributed a different way. There'll be different rules.
Yeah.
It's impossible to get ratings from those people.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but they won't give you any ratings.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, even at the grimmest economic times in this country, Hollywood was still thriving, right? So
Yeah.
during the Depression, you know, Hollywood was still thriving, the entertainment business. So
But it was also a fucking horrible industry at that time.
yes,
So yeah, so like let's not, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't exactly like egalitarian in any way,
No, no.
and nor is it now.
Right.
I guess it's just I think what's happening, and you know the description that you painted there, I think is often the company seeing what independent things are doing, going, well, you know, it would be very easy for us because we
Yeah.
have the capital.
Exactly.
So we can go into the independent space and turn it into
Right.
a corporate space.
Yeah, exactly.
And that has happened over and over and over and
Yeah.
over. And I think I don't know. I have a very pessimistic view
I think
on the
there's-
future of all of it.
I think there's going to be that, but I also think that you're going to get the individual creators instead of coming from the ground up. I think they're going to come from the top and say, I already have an existing fan base in capital, and they're going to make stuff that.
But
maybe,
how? So down the
But-
road,
well,
though,
I'm
how
saying-
do you get that existing fan base? And
Oh,
therefore the capital?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that I think this is what's going to happen. I think that those people are going to get to make the stuff that wouldn't get greenlit by, like, in other words, where is Mystery Science Theater right now? Do they do their own stuff and they self-fund it?
Essentially, yes.
That's what I mean.
Sure.
They existed in a place, they got their fan base, they think it's cool, and now they're like, we're going to keep making this regardless of whether or not anyone wants to put us on the air. We're
My
gonna
issue,
put us
though,
on the
is
air.
that with that comes the idea of pre-established stuff
Exactly.
that has an audience, being able to take that audience
Of course.
to another place. Yeah.
Exactly. That's
yeah,
the
it's
issue.
a weird thing.
That's the issue. The
Yeah.
issue is the lack of.
I don't want to end this on such a fucking bummer.
Well, the issue is the idea of
Should
the
have stopped when that asteroid hit the Earth.
the collective and the we're all working on this and we're all going to work on this and we're all going to work on this and it's going to bring us all up, which is the same thing as the lack of the sitcom like you were talking about,
Sure.
and the lack of the workplace that I don't have. You know what I mean? It's an interesting thing. It's a crazy thing, but you have built a crazy career, a lot of experiences, a lot of successes, a lot of varied projects, and that's awesome. I love it, and I appreciate you for pulling me into stuff and being there when I call and helping me out with all the stuff that I do.
of course, Joe. Look, like I've told you before, you know, the most rewarding thing to come out of this whole 28-year career of mine has been the people I've met.
Yeah,
The
of
people
course.
I've met and learned from and been able to work with and mentor in some way. That is hands down the most rewarding thing about it. You know, even up to this very moment,
Yeah.
here with you guys. You know what I
Today
mean?
I
is
love
the
it. I appreciate
pinnacle
that.
of your career, is what you're saying.
Oh, no.
It's been like true confessions.
yeah,
Ray,
yeah.
I've learned a lot
Yeah.
about Ray.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, this wacky world of just, you know, putting out content,
Yeah.
whether it's on, you know, on Discovery or History or YouTube, whatever it is, you bring people in a room like this and it's like we're living that dream, right? We're
Yeah.
not like telemarketing right now.
Exactly.
We're not at a
For
toll
sure.
booth collecting it. So that's the thing. The people, man. It's
Yeah.
all about the people.
Yeah, of course, of course, and
That's my hippie side coming out.
and I've seen the reality of that by you continuing the relationship with the guys from Tell 'em Steve Dave and Comic Book Men, and including, like, you know, you see it on screen with like Tales from Behind the Fake Counter and stuff, but then like the crew that I know in the background and Tom
Yes.
Mum and the different people that were part of it, and have been really kind to me and stuff like
Yeah,
that. But
man. But I'll tell you what. But what Ray said really holds true, and it's sad that it would take like for me, and I mean this could still happen. It still does happen. But like if I get a great fun show running job, there's a whole bunch of people that are so happy to hear it because I'm going to bring them in from the PAs to the DPs. But when it comes so isolated that it's like, well, I'm one man banding it, and it's just me and him and him.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I know.
That's got its own merit, but that larger fall off of people is deadly.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking to figure out how to expand that kind of stuff because it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, well, listen, Chuck, I'm looking for a way to become less irrelevant in the coming decade. I'm 50. How old am I? I'm 53. I'll be 54 in a couple of months. Yeah. I need at least 10 more years of relevancy.
Have you heard of this new really fun short format Vine?
Yeah.
Is that new?
It's out.
Vine.
We're working.
Are you just getting into Vine?
Oh, it's a different Vine.
Oh,
We're gonna Quibi a Vine.
yeah. We're gonna quibby Vine. Yeah,
Why not?
No, man.
But no, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, it was awesome, dude.
Thank
I
you,
want to talk
guys.
about Lil Twisters. I'm
Little twist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm going to give that a long think, man. Little twisters. How do we get insurance to cover that? This has been a blast. I honestly...
Bunch of 2-for-1s on that insurance.
That's true. He's always thinking. I love it. He's always down for a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
So what would you say-
We always go, hey, by weight.
So when
We'll do
you're-
benefits by weight.
When you're insuring a human being, you'd say they're around 6 feet tall and this many pounds.
Yeah.
That counts as one human. And they're like,
Are we agreed? Yeah.
We've got a cast of 3. He's smiling.
Yeah, now we're teetering to some ugly territory.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, it's been my
appreciate it.
honor. Thank you.
No, thank you, man.
It's been so great to, Chuck has sung your praises for years now.
Absolutely.
It's nice to finally meet you.
Hell yeah,
Nice
buddy.
to meet you, gents, as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. It was great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brian Nashel. Thank you to all of you who listened and or watched. We appreciate it. If you want to send us an email, funbearablepod@gmail.com or find us on socials @funbearablepod.
And now available on Funbearablepod at vine.org, I think it is.
Yes, it's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And stream Big Little Brawlers because you're looking for a second season, right, buddy?
Hell yeah. Push it
right.
hard. Push
Do
it
it.
hard for it.
Yeah,
Do it.
it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And then
Brian.
watch a bunch of
Thank you, sir.
tornado-related stuff so the algorithm says we want these together.
We want to intertwine
Yeah,
these two.
if there's a demand for it, we'll make it happen.
Yes. For Brian Nashel, Ray Harrington, and Chuck Staten, I'm Brad Rohr saying thank you so much, and we're sorry for being Funbearable. What was that?
I made a little, but I didn't do this. I just want to, I like that. Maybe I'm thinking of the P. Diddy stuff still. That's pretty cool.
I don't like it.
I could take a lot of his
it's
stuff
pretty what now?
Well, not that stuff, the other stuff.
All I'm saying is if you could tie one to a kite and
I'm going to end there. I'm going to cut it right there.